Yeah. I will call to order the July 14th meeting of the Lower Smoky Hill Water Supply Access District. I will ask staff if the confirmation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act required notice has been provided.
Yes.
Thank you. May we have a roll call?
Bill Longby,
Here.
Tom Toll, Carl Esping,
Here.
Greg Linkwitz,
Here.
Trent Davis,
Here.
Mike Hoppick,
Here.
Jerry Ivy.
Here. Thank you. We have a public hearing for the 2026 budget. I will open the public hearing.
Debbie Pack, Director of Finance and Administration. We are presenting today the 2026 budget. There have been no changes since the June 23rd meeting when it was provided at that Lower Hill Access District meeting. The budgeted expenditures for 2026 are proposed at $112,563, and the revenues are proposed at the same amount, and that is the amount that we will need to approve today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further staff comments?
No.
Any commissioner comments? Any public comment? I will close the public hearing. Take us to item 2.1A.
Commissioner Longby, I move we approve the 2026 budget as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2026 budget. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 3.1, approval of the June 23rd, 2025 minutes. I would entertain a motion for approval.
Commissioner,
Move to approve the minutes of the June 23rd, 2025 meeting.
Second?
Motion is second for approval of the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. New business. I will turn this over to the city clerk.
Item 4.1 is the election of officers, the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer.
Okay, eligible commissioners to serve are Mike Hoppick and Jerry Ivy for 2026. I will move to nominate Commissioner Mike Hoppick as president.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Is there a nomination for vice president?
I move we elect Jerry Ivy as vice president for 2026.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to elect Jerry Ivy as vice president. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Secretary.
And I take it that Tom and Carl will be serving again on this board?
Hope so.
Okay. I would move that Carl Esping serve as secretary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Carl Epstein to serve as secretary. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries.
I move that we elect Tom Toll to serve as treasurer.
I'll second that.
Motion to elect Tom Toll as treasurer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen. Next meeting date.
I did want to make one correction to this. This is our required fourth quarter meeting, so the September dates are not applicable because they fall in the third quarter. So we need to look at October, November, or December for your consideration.
Any preference?
I'm looking over towards Martha. I don't know if it makes any difference we'll be here at least.
No, I was checking
Yeah, that's what I
with
wondered.
Carl to see if it mattered to him for fall harvest, and he said he's available.
Yeah.
At this point.
I would shoot right there for the middle, November 10th.
Go ahead and make,
Or
Seems reasonable to me.
second. Motion and second. Set the next Water District meeting for November 10th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any unfinished business? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
And you will have,
Okay, that's all this question. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you can, and then we're gonna have to sign this one.
so you do have the document for us to sign then, Debbie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie, you want me to start it down the row?
Okay. Sign and pass.
Next meeting.
Where you go, huh?
We never stop, Carl, we just keep on going. We're gonna talk about water rates if you're gonna stay here.
Talk about one.
Water rates for the city. I know, right? All right. Yep.
So we're good to transition into the study session? Thank you. Oh, I do? Okay, thank you. Sure. All right, we're going to transition into the 2026 budget study session. And I will hand that off to Jacob, or do you want to go
Yeah,
straight
we'll
to
just
Mr.
kick it over to Debbie. I think this is, we are rounding out the budget process. I think this will be one of our last study sessions, so got quite a bit of information to go through. We'll just let Debbie hit it.
That is true. Debbie Pack, Director of Finance. This is our final plan study session for the 2026 budget. Today, we're going to discuss water and wastewater rates, the general fund spend down, and the capital improvement planning and sub-capital improvement plans, or the 10-year plan as we're calling it these days. So the first thing we're going to discuss is the 2026 water and wastewater rate analysis. A little bit of history. Back in 2008, when there was drought, the city considered changing how it billed its customers. So in 2009, it adopted the excess use water rate structure, which means that the unit of the price of water increased after a certain level. Instead of previously, it was the more you use, the less it cost. So, and they did that in order to promote water conservation because the drought was pretty significant at that time. A couple of the other notes to the rate study is we are still looking at future capital needs for the Schilling water remediation. We have added a downtown water plant upgrade to the considerations. And in this model, it's not noted here, but we have transitioned the wastewater treatment plant equipment upgrades from a cash project to a debt finance project. And the reason we did that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, is it enabled us to keep the increase in rates down a little bit by doing that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that is a big change in how we've been presenting this in the past few years. So the first slide is the item that I just gave you the new sheet on, because we had picked up the incorrect actual ending fund balance for 2024. So what this spreadsheet shows us is the projections for the utility fund. This is as of cost through May of 2025. The projections in this particular spreadsheet are what I would call a straight percentage, which means that as of May, we're saying we've collected 5/12 of the revenue, and we're saying that the expenses on the expense side for personnel are exactly what we've spent, which is the number of pay periods we've paid out over the number of pay periods we would pay out over the year. This isn't a very effective projection, but we just don't have the history for this particular fund to be able to say we collect 27% of the revenues over the first 5 months and the next. That's something we need to work on, getting that data put together. So in saying that, I would say that our projections are probably low on the revenue side because, as you can imagine, we collect more in revenues over the summer months than we do over the winter months. So that projection for year-end for revenue at $22.6 million, I would anticipate is a little low. And on the revenue side, what we've done is we've taken those expenses that we know, the personnel, and we've basically said that they're going to spend exactly what we budgeted on everything that's not personnel, which typically does not happen. So I would also say that we've probably overestimated or overprojected the expenses at $27.1 million. With those two numbers, which kind of overestimate on both sides, we're anticipating a net loss of about $4.5 million and an ending fund balance of, I don't have it in front of me because I gave all my sheets out, whatever, $11 million, I think is what it is. So that's just the projections right so far. So then if we turn to the next slide, the next slide is how we're budgeting for 2026 for the utility fund. Currently, we have proposed $23.9 million in revenue, which is an 8% increase over the 2024 revenue. And that kind of fills out because we did have a 2.5% increase in 2025 to rates, and we're proposing a 5% increase in rates in 2026, and then we have a little bit of growth in there that we're accounting for. On the expenditure side, the proposed budget is $28.4 million. That's a 5% increase over the 2024 actual number. And that would leave the fund balance at the end of 2026 proposed at about $7.5 million. So then when we get into the details of the, the assumptions of the model on the next slide, we are assuming for all personnel that the growth in personnel is 4% year over year. For benefits, it's also 4%. Commodities, 3%, contractual services, 3%, capital outlay, 1%. This doesn't tie directly with what we do on the budget specifically, but it just gives us kind of an average to project over. And the reason we kind of do that is because when we're projecting on the current budget, not on actual dollars from 3 years ago, because as you know, we don't have numbers for 2025. All we have is numbers for 2024 and actual. So all of the projections that we're making are based on the 2026 budget number, not actual numbers. So that's kind of why those assumptions don't kind of tie out with those, what we might say we're doing in the budget cycle. Historically, that bullet point on the top right, that's kind of where we've been as far as our budget to actual in this fund over the past 10 years. And you can see early on in that 10-year period, we weren't spending our entire budget, but in the last couple of years, we've gotten really close to that. And that goes out to Martha and her staff being able to put out projects and put out the capital spending, because that's really typically where we kind of fell behind in getting those projects out. So they're doing a much better job in getting those projects out now. So as we go through the projections for the current year, we're not making any adjustments to that budget that she's requested in 2026. Also in the analysis, some of the assumptions are that the fixed rate, there's a fixed monthly fee on the water for water and wastewater, and within the assumption it assumes that 16% of the total water expenses are covered by the water flat rate, and 20% of the wastewater expenses are covered by the sewer monthly fixed rate. So that's just kind of how the calculations are working within this projection or this model. Also in this model, the projects that are currently being supported by debt, there's a whole list of them there, mainly water line improvements, meter replacements. We have added the current projects, which are overlook of state water lines, the airport water main. We also have included in the model future debt for the wastewater plant equipment, as I mentioned earlier, a downtown water plant upgrade, and the groundwater remediation, which we've pushed out to 2032. Because we know kind of where that project is now, we wouldn't expect those costs to come in until a little later than we had previously estimated them. The next slide shows the number of water accounts, just history. A lot of this information now I'm giving you is just going to be history and how we based some of the numbers in the projections. You can see we did have a significant increase in 2024 by 166 accounts. Our average is still about 1.37% growth year over year. In the model, we did increase. We used to use 1%. We increased it to 2% because we know there's a lot of building going on and a lot of units being added to the system. So we did use 2% growth on the water accounts in the projection. The next slide is just volume historically of what we've billed and what we've had used in the system. About the average is about 1.6. That's actually million gallons, for water, and about 1.2 million in sewer. I would say the explanation for that difference is that a lot of people are on the minimum winter quarter average for sewer charges. We don't pay meter for meter, so that's why those numbers don't tie together. So the next piece of information I wanted to provide was kind of a fund balance history, and this is all kind of telling a story of where we've been and where we've been and how we've gotten to where we've gotten as far as rates. So you can see in 2023 our fund balance, in 2022 actually, which shows as the previous fund balance, we had a $23.5 million fund balance in the utility fund. That went down to about $21 million. And prior to that, that balance was increasing year after year after year. And we knew that was going to happen. We intentionally did that because of this big debt that we had. We had a wastewater treatment plant upgrade, that's $42 million, and we added a water treatment plant, which was $40 million, and we knew that was coming, so we were building that balance up in order to kind of be able to pay for the debt service as we put those in line later in the projections, and that's what we're seeing happening now. Those projects have been funded. We're having to start paying debt on those. So you can see now that we've added those projects and those debt, that fund balance is coming down fairly quickly, and we're projecting that to come down in 2030 to a negative, but that's just a projection. So we don't panic with that because that's 5 years from now, and we look at this every year. So every year we'll look at those projections and see and adjust those numbers to what we need to adjust them to. In the capital reserve fund, and this is where we were going to take that original equipment upgrade for the wastewater plant because we have about $10 million in there. But we kind of changed our strategy a couple of years ago with water main replacements. We did have that budgeted in the operating fund. But about 2 years ago, we chose to start transferring dollars into the capital reserve fund to cover those projects because we weren't able to do one every year. So it was like we were going to have to budget $4 million in 1 year and nothing in the next year, and then $4 million. And so what we decided to do a couple years ago was start transferring some funds into that capital reserve fund and then building that up to be able to do a project every other year at $4 million. And so in looking at the numbers and what it would have created as far as rate increases, we determined that we could still do that out of that capital reserve fund. We were transferring about $2.2 million because we were trying to also cover the cost of those, the upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant equipment. But by transferring that to a debt payment, we're now able to reduce the transfer out of the operating fund to $1 million a year and still cover $4 million every other year of improvement of water main replacements. So that's where you can see we're putting in $1 million every year. We're taking out $4 million every other year for that water main replacement, and that balance will sustain itself over the years doing that, doing that way. Does that make sense? I know that's a lot of information to kind of wrap around. The next slide is historical rate increases, and that's where I was trying to get to the story, was we have been preparing for some of these big projects. Some projects have come in that we really didn't have on the radar until a couple of years ago. But you can see here, historically, we're raising rates, and what we were trying to do is raise rates on a level basis, not to get a shock increase or anything like that, in order to maintain and sustain that fund balance. And so we had been raising rates 3.5%, 4% over the years. In 2021, 2022, or 22, 23, 24, we had that $26 million or $23.5 million fund balance. So it was very difficult at that point, and we weren't seeing that number come down yet at that point. Remember, we peaked at 2022. So in 2023, when we had that data, we made the decision to go with a no increase. And then the next year we did a very small increase because we were still seeing that number wasn't coming back down like we anticipated. But now that it is, we're seeing that those numbers are going to come true, and we're going to kind of have to make a little bit of that ground up with this 5% increase this year. The next 8 slides or so, I won't go into detail of them because they are the actual rate analysis. I can't take credit for this. Somebody else wrote it way before I came. But it's very valuable in finding out, kind of projecting where things are going and tracking costs on individual division levels. But basically, the study takes the current budget that we've proposed, and it projects from that budget what's going to happen over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years based on the assumptions that I mentioned earlier, the 4% increase in personnel and those numbers. So it takes the current budget and increases it the first year by 4%, and then it takes that number and increases it 4%. So it keeps doing that over and over for the next 10 or however many years you want to look at it. We only look at it for about 5 years. Because then we pull in the actuals and we can kind of readjust those numbers a little bit based on what the current budget is at that time. So those, like I said, those next 8 pages or so are all that study. When you get to slide 12 in the yellow section, that's where I was mentioning those are debt financing projects that have not been financed yet. So we do include those in the study just to make sure that we're capturing costs that are going to happen in the next 5 years or so, because those can really cause rates to have to be changed quite a bit. And so when you get to these are really the costs of every individual division within the utility fund. So it looks at capital and it looks at everything else. We are including in this projection the $2 million budget for system enhancements. So that allows Martha to fix wells and fix just things on an individual basis that they can do. They don't have a problem having $2 million in projects every year. It also allows them $500,000 for equipment and $70,000 for building improvements that they need for specific buildings and things like that. Page 14 or slide 14 is the kind of the one that we look at when we're trying to figure out where we're going to end up. The bright purple row on that particular line is showing us the ending fund balance after all those projections. So you can see, and that takes into account what we're proposing for the rate increase. So for this particular analysis, we're saying a 5% increase over the next 5 years, and that's what the fund balance is going to do over the next 5 years, which shows it's going to be in the negative in 2030, $300,000. Like I said, as we move forward closer to 2030, we'll adjust those numbers. And then it starts going back up because things have debts fallen off or something like that. So then it kind of picks itself back up, and we can reevaluate year after year what those numbers need to be. But we really try to look at least 5 years to make sure that we have enough time to react to what's happening in the actual numbers in the actual system itself. So the next couple of slides are just the calculations based on what that 5% increase does to the rate and how that rate then is how the revenue is calculated based on the number of customers we have and the number of gallons of water we use and things like that. So that's the next few pages in that analysis to kind of show what effect does this increase have on the rates and on what we would expect the revenues to be generated by the increase in rates that we have. Any questions on the analysis? I mean, I wouldn't expect anyone to understand it really, but I just want to have an overview of what you
And that
might.
analysis also includes a percentage increase in the number of accounts every year also?
Yes, 2% is the number
2%,
we're
so-
using now. Yep.
So is this projection 5% increase each year?
Yes, that's what the analysis shows today. And then next year, that may change depending on what the numbers actually end up being. But we're saying today, if we had no other data, we would say 5% for the next 5 years would be the increase we would need to maintain the stability of that fund. And that's adding the couple of new projects that we talked about, the downtown water plant that hasn't been upgraded since 2000. So it's 25 years old. The equipment in that plant is 25 years old. So that's kind of Martha's next big project that needs to be addressed from that perspective. So, makes sense? So the next slide 17, this is a sample billing. So what we try to do is say, okay, if we're going to do this, what effect does it have on our customers? And I showed this over the past few years, but for this particular 2026, what we're seeing is that on a customer, the average customer typical average customer uses 8,000 gallons in water, and 6,000 gallons is the kind of the minimum winter quarter average. So for that customer, it'd be about a $5.10 increase per month. And then for larger users, it's $9.22, and smaller users, it's about $2 per month increase by increasing all of the fees by 5%. And then the question we get often is, where does that put us with all of our peers? So the next slide, slide 18, is kind of shows that. So anything highlighted in orange, those are cities or utilities that are above our cost in water on the left-hand side, in wastewater or sewer on the right-hand side. So on the water side, there's about 7 above us. There's 18 in this list. There's about 7 above us in the water side, and on the wastewater side, there's 11 above us in the cost. And this is as of 2025 because that's the data. We don't know what they're going to do for the 2026 rates at this time, but this is data from 2025. So as you can see, we're kind of stay right, kind of in the middle, top 4th or 5th of the numbers in these particular things. We're not on either spectrum of costs compared to other utilities around the state. So are there any questions on that? At this point, I wanted to open up for discussion about our recommendation for the 5% increase and get your direction on that so that we can then present that and put it into the actual 2026 budget numbers. We have included that already in the numbers I presented to you, but if we need to make some adjustments, then I can do that before we provide that for publication next meeting. Did you want to add anything? Or Martha?
No, I think you covered it well. I mean, you'll see over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, we've had very minimal increases, and we did that intentionally because the fund balance was getting so big. But now, with the capacity to get those projects out the gate, we're never going to be at a shortage of projects in the water and wastewater system. So we need to start increasing the rates in order to get that fund balance where it needs to be for the long term.
When would customers see this on their bill?
It would be January of 2026, and it depends on when their bill is. I think the water system allows them to put a specific date So I think, and I don't quote me on this, I think the system can say as of 1/1, the rate changes to this. Anything you used before 1/1, it's on the old rate. I believe that's the new system can still do that. But it would be as of January of 2026.
I did have a question, and it probably doesn't pertain necessarily to this subject, but as far as the threshold for excessive water use, has that maintained or stayed the same, or is that going to fluctuate with this new?
We are not proposing that changes. Right now, it's 120% over your winter quarter average. Don't quote me on that number either, but I think that's what it is. 120% over your winter quarter average. If your winter quarter average is below the city average, then they use the city average. So if you only use 2,000 gallons, your minimum quarter average that excess use is on 120% of 5,861 gallons or something. It's right around 6,000 gallons. So that we're not proposing that changes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if that's something you wanted us to look at, we could certainly look at what that would do to rates and things like that, but we're not proposing that in this particular rate study.
All right. Any other questions? Looks like we can move on.
I did have one for Martha on the water plant upgrades. Seemed like last year we approved upgrading your network system and a lot of valves. Did that get done?
We're working on the water distribution system all the time between fire hydrants, valves, and water main replacements, if you're speaking for water
No, this was the
distribution.
computer network in the water plant.
Oh, well, that's our control system,
The
and our
control
SCADA system. The
Yeah.
valves threw me off in that conversation, so it's our SCADA system. And that's getting done.
That's
yes.
complete,
They're
okay.
they're working on it. There's about a handful of bugs that haven't shook out yet, but they're working on it.
So are they using it now or
Yes, using it, but
still
there's a
debugging?
couple of pieces that aren't functioning as
Right.
we would
Okay.
want them to. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So we're good to go? Okay. So the next conversation we wanted to have was the general fund spend down. The ending fund balance as of 12/31/2024 was $33,900,000. Well, 32,900,000. Sorry, I had a number wrong there. And the sheet here that I've provided on slide 19, this is again as a projection based on what the fund is doing today. This one we have a lot more detail on, so we're able to use a 3-year average on revenue collections. So we have a 3-year average of what we've collected to date through May for all of these revenue sources. So I think it's a lot better projection tool. So using those projection tools, we're still showing that the revenue is going to come in slightly under. The one caveat to that would be interest revenue. We do have several very large maturities coming up in late August, early September that I believe will pull that number up higher than this projection is showing. So I believe that number will be closer to the $4.5 to $5 million range. I didn't want to put the numbers in there because then it just kind of skews where the numbers are. So I believe that our revenue is going to come in pretty close to what we budgeted at $55.5 million. On the expenditure side, again, we used the personnel as far as what pay periods we've paid out compared to the number of pay periods we will pay out in a year. That typically works pretty well, depending on overtime, but we have overtime in the winter months and in both sides of the spectrum, so I think, it typically comes out a little bit better. And then we are, in the projection, we're assuming that everybody spends everything they're budgeted in all other line items, which may or may not happen. So for this projection, then, we're showing that the general fund at the end of the 2025 would be at $27.8 million. And as you recall, in 2025, we budgeted a $5 million transfer for the river project, and that's why we're seeing that fund balance go down. is because we did budget that, and we have done that. We've transferred those funds to that project. So then, as we are talking about things and ideas and options for you, and you may have many others that we want to discuss, looking at what we're projecting the ending fund balance to be at $27.8 million. Some of the possible uses that we've discussed before is to fund debt service projects with cash. And I will note that, as you recall, every time we get a Moody's opinion, it will say that either our debt is higher than our peers, or the last time they used a long-term liability language, which I believe is still debt. So I think by considering using some of this funding to pay down to not debt projects would be beneficial in that respect as well. So the one project that we thought would be helpful, or would be a good project to look at in this one, is the Fire Station 4 build. It's expected to be a little under a $10 million, probably not a $10 million project, but we're thinking if we fund that, part of that out of cash, out of the general fund at $5 million. We're budgeting in the budget a net loss of $690,000 roughly in the budget. That would bring that fund balance down to about $22 million at the end of 2026. And for certain, we would continually review this annually to see what actually happens and if there's other opportunities. If, for example, 2025, something happens, just because we budgeted this, doesn't mean we have to do it. If something happens and in March we think, no, we really shouldn't do that, we need to hold on to that cash, we've authorized this project to be funded through debt, so we can still do this until the time we finance it, which will be either next spring or the following, probably next spring, because I think it's supposed to be done in March. So it would be next May when we do our financing. So we would have until that time if we would choose to go backwards and decide not to do this. But we do need to budget a transfer if we want to do it the other way. So we have to kind of cover both decisions at this time. So if there's any other projects or any other ideas, this is where we want to have that conversation.
And we increased our target balance for this general fund from 10 to 15 million. Is that correct?
13.
So
I
was it
looked that up
13?
because we kept saying 15.
I kept thinking 15, but it's 13.
I know.
Okay.
I went back to the minutes because I couldn't remember. 13 million is
so
what we.
13 is our target, so we're
Yes.
9 over that. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Which is good, because we've always had a $10 million target and a $3.5 million balance. So,
Right.
So this is nice to be on the other side.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, and as time moves forward, and next year, if we feel like 5 million is the right number, and we'll see how this year plays out, if it goes up or down, we can adjust the target fund balance. I mean, I think we feel comfortable that $20 million in the bank is a pretty good dollar amount for the city, and at this point, I'm not sure we would want to dip down too far below that, but that's a discussion that we can have, as we budget in future years. Right now, it's certainly bigger than what we need it to be, and so we can take some of that money and use it and save some money on the financing side as we go forward.
When that time comes to, I guess I would think that the contractor we'd be making some payments.
We have been making payments, and we've been using our cash reserves to pay it until we debt finance it. So what we'd be doing when we debt finance is we'd be reimbursing ourselves for what we've paid out for that contract. That's how we do all of our debt projects. Okay. We used to issue temporary notes to cover the cash side of it, the cash flow, but since we've had $30 million in our general fund, we haven't done that for a couple of years just to save the interest on those temporary note issuances. But that's another thing we'll have to look at as we take that fund balance down, is we won't have that cash reserve necessary to cover a $25 million project. We have to issue temporary notes again, but that's just part of doing business.
So I guess it'll be interesting to see what that balance looks like at the end of the year and then make that final decision.
Right. And we can certainly do that, but if we think we might want to go this route, we need to make
Yeah,
that
need
decision
to-
to budget it,
Yeah,
to
right.
put it in our budget.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we have to do it. We just have to say we might want to do it. So. And I will say, as we looked at, and I don't have this in the order that we might want to look at it, but when I did the debt capacity calculation or analysis later on in this presentation with capital improvement, we did not include that in there. And so we kind of were looking at, okay, what happens to the debt side of this if we don't debt finance that? And it enabled us to move out that debt financing scale quite a bit to about 2031 before we'd need to do any adjustments to that to kind of make up for some of these. We're doing some pretty big projects right now, let's face it, so that we would we wouldn't have to do that. If we have to finance this part, that number may change earlier than that 2031. As far as having to have property tax or something to
But
cover
looking
that.
at that debt financing, you're looking at $5 million when you said
Yes.
that 2031. So when
Yes.
you said add to it, we'd be doing the 10 versus the 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
I think the 5 makes perfectly good sense right now.
I would agree.
And does that particular project seem like the right one? I mean,
Might as
That
well.
or streets
It's
or,
paving
you know.
out there. Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. That's the one right in front of us.
I think the best case scenario would be nice, we're in great shape next March and pay cash for the whole thing.
I do too. I would too.
We'll see.
I mean, that's always an option, although we wouldn't have budgeted it that way.
Yeah.
But we could always do an amendment.
But we have a letter here from some citizens who are asking for a traffic control device there where the new fire station is. So that might be an unexpected expense that we're gonna be looking at some point. Because I know that there's gonna be some signaling incorporated with the station to begin with, isn't there?
Were you asking about additional projects that we might want to?
Just
Yeah, or-
additional input if there's,
I mean, if this project looks good, I just think there's some big ticket items in our park master plan. It'd be nice if we could knock off, because they would exceed our yearly allotment for what we allocate for parks. Like, I don't know what to call it, whether the cabin or the just north of Bill Burke up in the top of the hill.
Indian Rock.
Yeah, is that do we consider that right, what's the official designation of that building?
Shelter.
Shelter? Okay, yeah. From memory, I thought that was around a $1 million project.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah,
It came
we've
up a
looked at
couple
that. I'm
years
not
ago.
sure we've ever defined an actual number or what we thought was the right project. I mean, when there's kind of been a placeholder in the Parks Master Plan, there's been lots of discussion back and forth whether that needs to be a full-on, like community center, or whether it needs to be replaced with just a pavilion. I mean, there are some issues with plumbing, and then there's not access to utilities at the top of the hill that we've always talked about. How do we figure out how to make that happen? So there's not been a defined plan. That would be something probably as part of a strategic planning discussion we'd need to come back and really discuss about what we thought was the right thing in that location. So we've certainly had some conversations in the past. It is on the Parks Master Plan, kind of identified, but we've never really fully fleshed out what we think that ought to be between staff and the city commission. So that's certainly an item that is on the list.
And I think
that we
that's
need to
probably one of the
discuss.
reasons it keeps every year just, I won't even say slides down the list, it slides off the list. And either spend money to define the plan so we can stick it in some year in the future, or demolish it and take it off the list.
Yep, it'll certainly be on the list for some sort of strategic planning discussion in the future.
Yeah.
Well,
All
we
those
have
all those
another-
come down to prioritizing, and
Right.
it just doesn't just doesn't come to the top of the list, so,
We have the
Well,
splash
at its
pad.
price tag, it never will.
yeah.
I mean, it's something,
So, yeah.
you either do it that year or, I mean, it'll never, because it dwarfs probably 70, it's equal to 70% of the other projects on that list.
We have the splash pad Parks project. I think the bids should be here in a couple weeks.
Yes.
And is that something we could utilize some of these funds with?
It's a good idea.
I think we currently have that budgeted out of the Parks Maintenance Fund.
Okay.
It's allocated out of there, but
I think we're all
Yeah,
holding our
I
breath
think we'll
to see
need to
how it
see, I'm
comes
not sure
in.
we have it fully allocated in parks maintenance. It'll really depend on what the bid comes back and how it looks. I mean, we have a pretty good amount set aside, but it just depends on that final number. And that, we certainly do have the opportunity to shuffle things around, and we'll come back with a funding plan on how we think we could make that work, once the bid comes back. But we just don't know enough today to be
And
able to tell you.
That's due the end of the month?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
so we have a consensus to go ahead and budget for that transfer.
Yes.
In the general fund. And then theoretically, if we can budget for the transfer out of the general fund into the capital reserve fund, and if there was another project that we chose to use it, we don't have to specify this project in the budget. So we do have that leeway, but we do have to budget the transfer between the two funds. So we'll certainly do that. The next section that we wanted to kind of go over so that we can kind of get ahead of this in approval is the CIP and the sub-CIP. The first one is the 5-year CIP. These are capital projects that are of larger cost or are funded through financing. I will say on the 2026 list, there's one new project, which is the wayfinding sign project being paid out of gas tax. For $200,000. The rest of these projects were on the last year's 5-year plan. There's nothing that's changed as far as timing. We've adjusted to some of the dollar amounts, some of them up, some of them down, just based on information that we've gathered so far. We did a lot of design work in 2025, so we're able to kind of pinch those numbers down to a little bit better number. The one that I will say that is not on here that will come when we actually approve this document, which is a formal approval, is the wastewater plant equipment upgrade downtown. We didn't have it on this list. And between the two of these project analysis, I didn't get it on this list. So I will add that to this list as one of Martha's projects for 2026. 2027, there's nothing new changed there. We still have East Cloud, construction of East Magnolia, construction of East Magnolia Road, landfill 6, cell 6 design, a lot of those projects. In 2026, I could just mention that we do have the construction of East Crawford by the new fire station, construction of West Magnolia Phase 2 and 3, and the 9th and Waterwell signal and roundabout that we've been talking about. That design that you've seen, I think you approved or will be approving that design coming up. We have design of the East Magnolia corridor and the Ohio and Schilling roundabout. 2026, we have the North Ohio Overpass painting project and improvements on the runway out at Berkeley Family Recreation Area. Those are all projects that are anticipated to be bonded, but as we get closer to those projects, we always have that option to do it through cash, as we were just speaking earlier. So 22, 23, I got my...
I had a question. We had a deal in there for dirt for old, landfill. Mm-hmm. Whatever happened with the stuff out there at Schwann's? That dirt pile?
Yeah, nothing at this point. We've not done any. At one point, we were going to take it and test it, and they continued to add dirt, and they were kind of not ever done with that. So we've not had any conversations with Swans in some time about that dirt pile. So If we are to take it, we would need to test it and make sure that it's appropriate to
And
be
we
able to
talked
use.
about that. Did we budget for that at that point, or did we just? I thought we budgeted for it.
We did, actually. I think we approved that project
Yeah.
in the, yeah, in the.
In 25.
Utility fund. I mean, we're in the solid waste fund. I think we did budget for it, but at this point, we've not seen any additional action on it. If we were gonna do it, we would need to test it and make sure it was appropriate and move forward. But yeah, we have set some funds aside for that, and whether it's that dirt or some other dirt, we will continually have needs for dirt at the landfill.
We had it in the 25 CIP, but pushed it 26 because they weren't going to get it done in 25 as well.
What that? How much was that? Was that 500?
We have
I
250,000.
thought the 250 here, but is that?
I don't remember what it was in 25.
I believe it was
it
around
250?
$500,000.
I thought it was around 500
Yeah, I don't-
for that big pile outage.
Oh, how much it was for that pile?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It's just.
I don't remember. Yes, come in. Yes, please.
Jim Coa, city engineer. When we were looking at the Swans soil stockpiled at the south end of their site, we were looking at hauling that for overburden to the landfill. And it was about $500,000 to haul it because in the life cycle of the landfill, there's a soil deficit and we're going to need millions of yards of dirt. Part of that was topsoil, which we need for the old shooting range, animal hospital site on State Street. So we never did get the site tested, didn't verify that it was suitable to use. So we put a placeholder in the budget to take care of at least the State Street site, buying topsoil from one of the sand pits locally. So that's kind of how the two are getting crossed over there.
Thank you.
State Street's complete, isn't it?
No, we never have placed topsoil to cover the old landfill, and we haven't reseeded it. We just continue to mow the weeds that are out there. We took the trees out, but we have to put at least 12 to 18 inches of new soil over it because as that old site has eroded down, there's a lot of glass and exposed metal that to be in compliance, we need a good cover of topsoil above it.
Okay. Yeah, I had in mind that was completed.
No, we hauled on the Kubota expansion. We hauled some topsoil when they bought Bus Boom and Raw to that site, but it wasn't near enough to do the whole thing. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
And then in 2028, I will be adding also the downtown water plant upgrades that we talked about in the rate study when we get to the final document, because we have it in Martha's rate study for financing in 2029. So we'll be adding that to this particular CIP. I think the next slides 24, 25, this is the debt capacity analysis that we have done, just to kind of see, make sure that the projects that we have in the plan that are going to be supported by property tax, that the debt fund would support them through property tax. As you can see by this, the projects that we do have in here, which are include or exclude the $5 million for the fire station, but include all of those that are in the 5-year CIP plan that are supported by property tax. It does enable us to support those projects. I say that there may be we did do a one-time reallocation from the debt service fund to the general fund in the 2026 budget. We did anticipate that we would flip that back in 2027. Depending on the rate of increase of property tax and the revenue neutral rate and how we kind of approach those things, I would anticipate that we'll need the dollars equivalent to a mill rate increase sometime in the early 2030s. But that can change on how we get there, just depending on what the mill levy does and what the assessed valuations do. So I still think it's a pretty strong, the way we have it, we have a pretty strong capability of projecting out and being able to maintain the debt projects that we do have in the 10-year CIP or the 5-year CIP. So The next section that we want to talk about is the sub-CIP, and this is, as you recall, 2 years ago, we went to a new program where we were doing a 10-year CIP planning. Rather than looking at next year, we wanted to look at all of our capital replacement, try to put that out in a 10-year scope so that we could figure out a little bit better way to fund over a level amount those projects that were needed to be done over the next 10 years. So, and we have several categories here. We have buildings and facilities, we have parks, we have streets, we have vehicles and equipment, and we have system enhancements for utilities. So each of those funds kind of have unique funding sources, and so they've been separated out by those funding sources. In 2026, we're recommending for the Building and Facilities Reserve Fund, projects in an amount of $673,500. As you can see, a list of those are provided on that report. The biggest one is the continuation of the remodel of the police department space. I think Troy talked about that a week or so ago. Some other projects in there, some improvements at TPAC. And then some dollars have been put in here for, once the fire station does move, to rehabilitate the old fire station into some usable space for other departments of the city to be able to use that space for their uses. This fund, if you look at the next slide, currently has a fund balance at the end of 2024 of $1.6 million. One of the recommendations we made early on in the budget process was not to transfer the sales tax dollars into this fund in 2025 to help the sales tax capital fund. But you can see, even with the anticipated expenses in 25 and 26, we would anticipate this fund has a little over $1 million left at the end of 2026. And you can see with the plan that we've been provided, which it's kind of hard to do because they are working with buildings and things come up and things like that. With the information that we have, that fund should support itself and its projects as we have them, the information available today. The next category would be Park Maintenance Reserve Fund. In 2026, we're recommending $790,000 of improvements. That continues the concrete improvements in the parks at $300,000. It also continues the bathroom remodel project at $330,000, and then some smaller projects that they've got lined up for 2026. In that particular fund, we have a current, at the end of 2024, the balance was $1.8 million. And with the projection of increase in dollars in that fund for 26 and expenses, we anticipate that fund to have about $800,000 at the end of 2026. And as you look at their 10-year capital plan, they have some pretty aggressive spending in the next few years. So based on the allocation that they're currently allowed, we'll have to do some reevaluating and to figure out when we can do those projects and kind of timing as far as when those are going to happen. And that all is prefaced on what we get done in the current years that we have done. So some of those things might move out, some of those things, might move in, but we'll have to evaluate that funding level to see if we need to either fund more, if we have ability to, or move some of those projects.
Yeah. How old is that $500,000 allotment? Because it seems like the list is kind of old and the $500,000 is kind of old, and I imagine it doesn't buy as much as it did when the list came out.
That came from the 2016 sales tax initiative when we committed to spending $500,000 on parks maintenance. That's where it came from. So it's from 2016.
So we've lost whatever 10 years of inflation
there were a
is,
couple years
as far
in
as
there.
Purchasing power. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple years in there that we did put more money in there because we had it available, but the $500,000 was created from that original. I don't know what happened before that, but that was where that number came from in that that sales tax initiative.
It just seems like we can get less and less done each year out of that same amount. When would we be discussing increasing that amount?
Well, at this point, that comes out of the sales tax capital, and that fund is pretty well maxed out with the growth that we've had in sales tax. So as sales tax has grown, we've taken that fund and we've spread it out into other things. We've added additional projects. So, for instance, we added fire trucks out of that fund. So we kind of have to fund everything that we have in there, and then as sales tax, if it continues to increase or we see it go up, then we have additional money in those funds, and then we can shuffle it and put it where we think it needs to be. But you're not wrong in several aspects. We've had the same dollar amount for parks. We've had the same dollar amount for street repairs for that period of time. We've had the same dollar amount for other Kenwood Cove. I think we increased Kenwood Cove a little bit, maybe. There are certainly areas in the sales tax capital where we probably, in the future, if sales tax goes up, we need to think about how we reallocate that to the priorities that we have and not add new and additional priorities. Because I think what we've done over the past couple of years, when we saw really big, double-digit sales tax increases, we added additional priorities without putting money back into things like streets that were kind of the original priority in that. So certainly something that we have to look at every year. And this year in particular, for 26 budget, we are saying that we're not going to fund some of those items like building equipment, building and facilities. We're not going to fund it. We're not going to transfer into the debt service fund so that we can make sure that fund is stable for a couple of years, and hopefully sales tax grows and it's not an issue, but it's something we certainly have to look at every time we come through the budget process.
Thank you.
And I will say, the other side is we're doing a better job of spending
Yes.
it in parks. For some time, we just didn't have the capacity to get those projects out the door and done, and we are doing a much better job. The Parks Department is doing a much better job of getting those projects done, bid out and done, all the way through the process. So when they do a good job of getting them out, it causes that fund balance to go down pretty quickly.
Speaking of parks, is the skate park entered the conversation at all pertaining to this in budgeting, or is that kind of on the back burner?
So at this point, the skate park is a pretty low priority on the overall parks master plan. It's something that we can always move around, but it was very close to the bottom, if I recall, of the parks master plan priority list. So it's not something that we've had some conversations, and we certainly could move that around. I think that's probably another thing during a strategic planning discussion we probably ought to take another look at. But it's at this point, it's pretty far down the line as far as parks master plan items. So we do not have an immediate, plan, I think, for an upgrade of the skate park.
Understood.
The next few slides are streets. The first one is streets that are supported by gas tax. These are projects that are typically maintenance. They do have some, like the pedestrian bridge at Quail Hollow in here, a 9th Street traffic signal in here for 2026. $1.5 million out of gas tax is being budgeted. That fund also, the revenue of that fund has come down significantly. We had a lot of fund balance in there, so we had increased our spending in there significantly, trying to get that spent down. We've done that. So now we're having to cut that spending down a little bit back to where the actual revenue covers that. And then the sales tax capital funding of the street maintenance fund, we have projects in there of $3.7 million, which includes the normal maintenance of UBAS, chip seal, major and minor concrete repairs for that particular fund. That particular fund had a fund balance of $600,000 at the end of 2024. With budgeted expenses and revenue in that fund, we anticipate that fund to be about $500,000 at the end of 2026. The next CIP is system enhancements, and this kind of shows you kind of the projects that Martha and her team are trying to do annually, in addition to those major projects of the whole plant upgrades and things like that. So they have $2 million of projects lined out for 2026, including painting water towers and, water main replacements at specific sites, and things like that. So she's got that list of projects on her system enhancements for 2026. Vehicles and equipment is probably the most complex section that we deal with because there's just so many departments that have needs in this department. We have separated this just for tracking of our own between the golf is that's supported by sales tax, and then all other departments that are supported directly by the Vehicles and Equipment Fund. So in 2026, we put $2 million into this fund annually. So in 2026, we've kind of narrowed this request down to $1,974,911. And in this fund, we currently have, I didn't put it in here. I didn't give you that information. I thought I wrote it down here somewhere. I didn't give you the information on that one. So I apologize. And then we do have one ambulance scheduled for replacement or remounting in 2026 at $303,000. And then for the other funding of vehicles and equipment, central garage, sanitation, solid waste, and utilities have lists for their particular items that we'll be bringing back to you for approval later in the after budget probably. So are there any questions on any of those?
Doesn't appear so.
Okay, that's all I have for today then.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Pack. Appreciate it. It was very thorough. And with that, we'll adjourn and we'll reconvene at 4 o'clock at the usual scheduled meeting time. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We're going to call to order the Salina City Commission meeting for July 14th, 2025. And with that, I'll request staff confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
On to roll call.
Mayor Linkowitz,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Here.
Commissioner Ivy,
Here.
Commissioner Longbine.
Here.
All those who are able, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. No public hearings, so on to the consent agenda.
Item 4.1, consider approval of the minutes of the June 23rd, 2025 regular meeting. Item 4.2, consider approval of the minutes of the July 2nd, 2025 special meeting. Item 4.3, consider authorizing the interim city manager to approve a purchase order for HVAC replacements at the Salina Art Center, tuition, heating, and air in the amount of $51,563.87. Item 4.4, consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with WSP USA Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $506,772 for engineering design services for phases 2 and 3 of West Magnolia Road improvements. And item 4.5, consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute a contract with Caw Valley Engineering in an amount not to exceed $420,425 for engineering design services for a roundabout at 9th Street and Waterwell Road.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda a commissioner would like removed?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to remove item 4.4 and 4.5.
Okay, noted. The other items on the consent agenda, do any members of the public wish to comment on those? Okay, we'll move on to 4.4. Actually, hold on, can we approve the consent agenda after we do the?
I think we can do the first three. Yeah, I move that we approve consent agenda items 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. On to 4.4.
Item 4.4 again is to consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with WSB USA Inc. in an amount not to exceed $506,772 for engineering design services for phases 2 and 3 of West Magnolia Road improvements.
Commissioner Longbine, is there something specific you'd like,
Well, yes.
questions, or would you like me to go through the staff report?
This, big ticket item that's going to impact a lot of people, and it's a lot of money. So I think we need to hear just what's going to happen and what the purpose of this is.
Okay, for the West Magnolia project or the,
I know what's going to happen, but the public doesn't.
okay. Well, I'll go through the West Magnolia project and then the 9th Street project.
Okay.
And if you have any questions on West Magnolia, I'll stop and you can follow up. But currently on West Magnolia, west of I-135, there is a lot of housing, federally funded, subsidized with the city housing going in right out there off Virginia Drive, which is by Menards as far as a landmark for people. Lots of apartment buildings are in phase 1. A lot of micro homes, duplexes, and more apartments are in phase 2. That's getting platted and going to be built soon. So the city is in the process of improving Magnolia Road from I-135 to Centennial Road. The first phase of that, we received the KDOT grant for. We're in the process of buying right-of-way, and we hope to let here probably next month or September. The first phase, which goes from 135 to just west of Virginia Drive. It'll be a 3-lane typical section. The intersection at Virginia Drive will be a roundabout. that will handle WB 67 trucks. It is considered an impact street, so we'll try to do as much as we can as far as improvements. And then phases 2 and 3 go from the Ag Credit Building right there west of Virginia Drive, clear on over to Centennial. That project we're wanting to design, and that's what this contract is for, includes a 3-lane typical section and another roundabout at the intersection of Magnolia Drive and Centennial. In conjunction with that intersection, K-State has requested a 4th leg of that intersection, or an extension to the west, for a future entryway into their campus. So this project would provide a roundabout at Centennial Drive. There again, designed for truck traffic, but it would have a 4th leg heading west into the K-State campus. The extension of that street would be covered by K-State as far as design and construction. The purpose of this is to connect the campus, all of the businesses, and the business district on 9th Street with better traffic for all of the additional cars that are going to be there because of this housing, all of the expansion and growth at the airport, and the pedestrians and bicyclists that would want to use the facilities out on Centennial and the shopping district over on 9th Street. So the project does include an off system or off to the side bicycle path, a 10-foot path on the south side, and a 5-foot sidewalk on the north side. One of the things that we are not sure how expensive it's going to be is we're dealing with another railroad crossing and pedestrian crossings, and you're going to hear later in another presentation just how expensive those can be. But the first project's a little, we have a $1.5 million grant. It's about a $2.5 million project. We hope to let it this summer and be building it early next spring. The project we're requesting to get designed now would begin design now. We would finish design in about a year, short of a year. Need to buy right-of-way, move utilities, and it says build in 26, but really we're going to let it next fall, so it'll probably be built in late fall or early 27. But it will be a 3-lane impact street with a 1 lane in each direction, a middle turn lane, with the exception of maybe at the railroad tracks. We may need to just keep it at a 2-lane there to minimize railroad impacts. We'll have sidewalks on both sides that'll go from the K-State campus or the airport on over to the existing sidewalk just west of Virginia Drive.
And WSP is doing the design on this first section.
Yes,
as well,
WSP
correct?
was and we talked about using our selection criteria, was selected for the corridor study, 0 to 30% plans on the entire route, and then they were selected to do the first phase of construction, which we did get a KDOT grant to pay over half of it. And then because they've done so much design work, we did select them to finish up the phase 2 and 3 for this last part of the West Magnolia improvement.
Okay. Well, it is a well-traveled roadway that was never designed to handle the volume of traffic it sees today, and so this is a worthwhile project, although it's a lot of money to design a road. It's complicated.
Well, there is a box bridge in the middle of it, the old West Dry Creek Channel. Just west of the Dry Creek Channel is floodplain, so we have a lot of environmental criteria that we have to meet and follow. We have a railroad, and then we have a pretty significant intersection, trying to design that to be built under traffic so that we can keep Magnolia and Centennial Drive open as much as we can during construction because of all the ongoing expansions out there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, did you want to talk about 9th Street too? That's the other one.
Well,
Or did you want to finish this one up first?
We need to complete this item.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll bring you back up for the other item. We just need to get this to the commission and vote on it. And so no more questions, so I'll open this one up to the public. Any public comment on this particular item?
Good afternoon. So we're doing it in the order of Magnolia and Virginia, or Magnolia?
We're currently on item 4.4.
Is that Magnolia?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I just showed up.
No worries.
It may have already been addressed here, but some of the concerns. I don't have a CDL. I probably couldn't pass the driving test. But I have heard from a number of people that are truck drivers with concerns about having a one-lane roundabout in an area that's going to probably receive significant truck traffic because of the Menards location there. My main concern is still with, I don't believe that the emergency access is when the planning department calculated that out, that is sufficient to meet the code, but also if it's going to be a gated driveway on one of those lanes. And I just think that a roundabout in that area may be problematic. Maybe this was covered in the thing. Do you have an anticipated construction schedule? And what will the detour look like for people that shop out there at Menards? And I'm assuming that by the time they break ground on this, the apartment buildings will be at least many of them rented out. And just the last thing, because it came up at the very end of the conversation, was Menards involved in any of the discussion, or the folks that own the hotel there? Thanks.
You have a response for any of those questions?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in the preliminary phases of this as far as discussions with Menards or the existing hotel that are on Virginia Drive. The roundabout is designed to carry full-size semis. It's a 16-foot lane and a 12-foot apron, and the apron is so that the trailer, as it goes around the circle, the back end tends to drift in, and as it goes around the corner, the truck stays in the lanes and the trailer goes up on the apron. It's a 10-foot concrete pavement. It's a rollover curb. It's designed to do that. It will carry the trucks adequately. A roundabout does slow people down, so as far as moving the trucks and moving traffic, even when the apartments are built out, having a roundabout keeping traffic moving slowly helps prevent the long queues and backups and having people set through several cycles. What was the other question?
And actually, this item is not that roundabout. This is a project that project's already been approved. There was a public process. We had several public meetings that were held. This is about design of Phase 2 and Phase 3. We will be letting that project in the future. There'll be more information about the timeline and all that sort of stuff when we let the project and when we award the bid later this year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
once we get a
totally
contractor.
separate project than what we're discussing right here tonight.
And the actual design of this one will be based on traffic counts and volumes and when we get to that point.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, I would add that, the questions about roundabouts is why we're having a world class engineering firm design it. It's not like we're doing this in-house, and they've done it before.
Yeah, and the other thing is carrying traffic through construction, there will be no detours. There's a 6th-phase diagram on the Virginia Drive project that will keep it open the entire time, and we would anticipate doing something similar to that when we have Centennial Road and Magnolia under construction. So we'll keep it open as much as we can, if not all the time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to comment on this item?
I just wanted to ask.
Sir, I just need you to give your name and your address first. This is just part of the process, and it's a formality we need to.
My name's Alex Bishel. I live on Huell Circle, Salina, Kansas.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, when you do projects like roundabouts and highways and stuff like that. Have you ever thought of flipping the land because of the value added from these projects to earn money back on them? Like selling the land, flipping it?
We don't own the land.
Oh, you
That's
don't
not-
own?
Yeah, those are privately owned. I mean,
Okay.
but thank you. I appreciate the input. Anyone else?
Okay, I'm Lucille Sanderson, Salina. I know where I will not be shopping. I don't know the first thing how to drive around a roundabout. I don't. Now, I have driven in Hayes. They've got roundabouts all over. I put my life behind that steering wheel, and I wonder if I'll get through without causing an accident, because I honestly do not know how you're to drive around a roundabout. So don't be in a hurry to get too many, but I will not be going to Menards. Because I'm telling you the truth, I do not know how to drive on a roundabout. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Linkwitz, I move that we authorize the city manager to execute an engineering services agreement with WSP USA, Inc. for the West Magnolia Phase 2 and 3 project, city project number 25006, in an amount not to exceed $506,772.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Authorize the city manager to execute an engineering service agreement with WSP USA Incorporated for the West Magnolia Phase 2 and 3 project, city project number 25006, in an amount not to exceed $506,772. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. And on to 4.5.
Item 4.5 is to consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute a contract with Caw Valley Engineering in an amount not to exceed $420,425 for engineering design services for a roundabout at 9th Street and Waterwell Road.
Well, this was a new one for me. And I'll admit, there's a learning curve to driving roundabouts, but they're doing it all over the world. Has there been input from the stakeholders and people out there on this corner?
Anecdotally, we have talked to a few of them, and that's a great question, Commissioner Longbine. But one of the first things in this engineering study, because there's so much going on right now, not only the existing businesses, but the businesses that are expanding, to get a handle on what the traffic is going to be next year, but 5 years or 10 years from now, as part of the scope for this project, one of the first things a consultant engineer is supposed to do is to do a traffic study by contacting area firms to develop traffic projections for the entire area. This will include, but not limited to, Kubota Great Plains Manufacturing, Schwann's Pizza or Tony's, Advanced Auto Parts, Crestwood, Maverick Truck Stop Development, the Amazon Warehouse, Stryton Energy, Lon MacArthur, Marshall Motors, Salina Airport Authority, Federal Express, Vortex, Bulk Handling, Doug Bradley, and other emerging businesses, so that we knew there were a lot of existing businesses. We could count it today, but I can guarantee you if we counted it, 6 months from now, it's going to be a lot different. And we want to make sure that we design this to handle the traffic that we're going to need. So it's more work than what our staff could do, but we're hiring a consultant to contact all of these firms in that South Industrial Park and determine what their current traffic is, what it's going to be next year, 5 years, or 10 years. Try to get projections so that we can make sure whatever we design is going to last and going to work.
Okay. My other question is the cost. Not that much difference in the cost between the WSP agreement for nearly 3/4 of a mile. Did this go out for bids, or this seems like a lot of money for one intersection?
Well, There's a little bit of history here. We had intended on doing an engineering study and looking at a roundabout for Schilling and Ohio. Because of all of the traffic queues and backups that we're experiencing on Schilling, especially during the peak hours. But as, and we only have so many dollars available per year, but as the Kubota expansion took place, the Schwann's Big Freezer took place, and now Amazon and Maverick, it's like we were going to be in big trouble on this corner more than we would be on the other one. So this kind of leapfrog and is into the queue. We'd planned on trying to rebuild this intersection, but if you look at the map, this intersection, there's a gap between a 2-lane roadway south of this intersection and the 4-lane roadway just north of Lon MacArthur. And we don't know that we necessarily need a big 4-lane expressway in this part of town in the future. So there is a segment of about 3/4 miles that we want to build another 3-lane section with up to the city standards and an impact street standards as far as an entryway to the city. But we want to transition from that 4-lane down to the roundabout and tie it all together and do it now before the truck traffic really gets bad. But instead of coming back in 2 years, building the roundabout and come back and fix the road, we combined those two projects. So that's why this project is more expensive than originally anticipated.
And just to keep in mind, the WSP project, they have already done 30% design on those other phases, so it's not as much design. It's not going from 0 to 100 like we'll have to do on the South 9th water well. So there is a little bit of difference in cost there as well.
And that is a really flat part of town. That just the hydrology and drainage and stuff is going to be pretty clever to get it work right.
I think this is a good project and a good answer to that intersection. My only question is, I believe the speed limit as you get going both north and south there on 9th Street, is it 40 or 45? So we'll have to slow that traffic down, obviously, before it gets to the roundabout.
Yes.
But there's a lot of traffic there, and that's a dangerous intersection that I think really needs to be addressed. So I'm glad to see us addressing that corner right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's been calls for a traffic signal there for many years, and there's been a lot of bad accidents there. And
well, one of the worst intersections in town as far as property damage only accidents is 9th and Magnolia. And there's a limited amount of space between 9th Street and the interstate, the ramps. We have dual left turns in some of those quadrants that are cause for some of those accidents. And actually, I've seen, just anecdotally, 2 lanes of traffic backed up to the west past the Dillons and the Quick Trip entrance there at the mall by Dick's. And that's 350 feet. That's 2 lanes of traffic. Waterwell Road between 9th Street and where the ramps, the turning lanes on the westbound traffic is about 550 feet. So if we tried to put a single turn lane in there instead of a dual, which I am concerned with a lot of truck traffic and dual lefts, we'd have 700 feet of trucks lined up, which would be up to the ramp. And we just can't be blocking the ramp and all the turning movements and causing confusion up there either. So a roundabout, once we do the study and make sure it'll work, we think is a lot better solution than a signal with dual lefts.
you mentioned the Maverick truck stop.
Yes.
I questioned that recently with Ms. Driscoll. Have they got any, are they getting ready to start on that?
They're in the final stages of getting their streets platted and the platting's done, but the design approved, and I think will be coming for specials pretty soon.
Yeah, I don't know what the schedule is for that, but we can certainly find out.
There's a lot of engineering going on for that site right now.
Okay. Well, the Amazon facility is looking to be open by October.
Yeah, early this fall.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yep, no problem, thank you.
Any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I apologize before. I did not identify myself. My name is John Blanchard, and the lovely lady back there is Lucille Sanderson for the clerk. This is the one that I actually came for, so I apologize for bringing up the roundabout last time. On this, my only question on this would once again be the trucks. I'm sure that the engineers are going to be involved with that. I know discussions on roundabouts and projects that I've, in the past, it's been a while for a roundabout, was with emergency equipment, and some of those questions are about how do you make sure people aren't stopping their cars in the middle of a roundabout when emergency equipment is coming. So, as Ms. Sanderson did say, I think there's going to need to be some education and so on. One of my questions is how significant of an education process is there? Also, I've failed to mention before, I like roundabouts. I think there are a lot of really good things about roundabouts. So I'm not opposed to them, but it will take a bit of a learning curve on that. So one of the things is, what is that now on the fiscal note? I don't know if this was in the CIP or not. I could have looked in that, but just the ideas that go along with the CIP is, do we have an anticipated budget for the finished product, the construction? Also, a rough timeline on that as well, and then the funding source. How much of it is us? How much maybe are we getting from the state or federal pass-throughs? Thank you.
Thanks. He's going to answer that question, if you don't mind. Appreciate your patience.
Well, there were a number of questions there. As far as funding, we don't have any designated federal funding or grants for these particular projects yet because they're under-designed and we haven't applied for any. We do get $500,000 to $600,000 a year as part of our normal federal fund exchange dollars, and those can be programmed either for our maintenance projects or a project like this, but there's no additional funding yet. On the WSP project, there is specifically, because of the connection with the airport and the campus, and there are a lot of components to be in multimodal, we do have a section of their contract where they are to vet out or try to apply for or let us know about available grants for it. I don't know, I can't remember what the other questions were.
Yeah, the projects are on the CIP. They're planned on the CIP. They've been part of the program for quite some time. So this one is a little bit unique because it takes two projects and combines them into one. So they were listed separately, but it is on the CIP. So it is budgeted. It's property tax supported bonds is what we'll pay for the projects. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Richard Humphrey, Salina, Kansas. As this proceeds, and I'm excited for it, hopefully we can try to work with the art development so that we can exchange art pieces throughout the years and really try to incorporate that for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. If nobody else, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Linkowitz, I move to approve the selection of Caw Valley Engineering and authorize the interim city manager to execute the engineering services agreement with them for the 9th Street and Waterwell Road Improvement Project, city project number 25007, in amount not to exceed $420,425.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the interim city manager to execute the engineering services agreement with Caw Valley Engineering for the 9th Street and Waterwell Road Improvement Project, city project number 25007, in an amount not to exceed $420,425. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. On to administration, 5.1.
Item 5.1, consider authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with Union Pacific Railroad to perform work on railroad right-of-way associated with the pedestrian crossings at Belmont Boulevard and Magnolia Road for the Magnolia Trail project.
Thank you. Back again.
Yeah, Jim Kowach, city engineer. This is a project that takes a portion of the sidewalk on the south side of Magnolia Road and converts it to a multi-use path, but then also extends where we do not have a sidewalk. We widen the box culvert that's about halfway between the railroad tracks and 9th Street so that we can have a 10-foot path from 9th Street all the way to Ohio on the south side. We did apply for and get a transportation alternative grant back in 2021. So this project has taken a long time to develop. We went back and forth. We got selected for the grant, and then we had to go through the whole process of getting approved by KDOT. At the original estimate for the project was about $600,000, $500,000 to $600,000. But then we talked about needing to do a box extension, and then construction costs for the last 4 or 5 years. We know that those have been rapidly ratcheting up due to inflation. We lost the engineer that was in charge of this project to retirement. We lost the city engineer that was working on this. We tried to work with KDOT to get an exemption to exclude the railroad crossing from this project because it goes from Ohio all the way to 9th Street, but we all know that Belmont cuts across there at an angle. We have existing crossings there now. We think they're completely safe, but KDOT said that we had to include the railroad crossings as part of the project if we wanted the grant, that the project has to have a logical termini. It can't just leave something out in the middle. So we went back and forth. They said, no, you have to work with the railroad. So we had to ask the railroad what they thought of our plan. And once they got to comment, the sidewalk that goes at an angle along the east side of Belmont as you walk northeast is in railroad right-of-way. And of course, they don't want anybody walking in railroad right-of-way. They consider any kind of crossing a trespass. So to take that section of sidewalk out, we actually had to run the sidewalk in the southeast quadrant outside the railroad right-of-way, do a 90-degree crossing about 100 feet south of the current intersection, and then go back north. And then similarly, they did not like how the corner of the existing sidewalk in the northeast side came around and crossed railroad right-of-way. So the railroad asked us to redesign it and do the same thing, move the railroad crossing at a 90-degree north of the intersection. So there's a couple little pieces of sidewalk. They're railroad crossings, railroad pedestrian crossings, about the size of a normal desk. And so we sent the plans to the railroad back and forth. Here's what we want. Last phase is for them to send us an estimate for the work they expect to do. Well, because these two crossings met some threshold for being so far apart, the railroad is adamant that they have to replace the tracks and the rail and the ballast and stuff in between them. So what we had estimated as maybe a $20,000 or $30,000 pedestrian crossing is now a $250,000 expense. And we have to do it if we want the KDOT money, so it's a catch-22. This is one of the corridors that was definitely identified as a hot spot in our whole Safe Streets for All program. We're adamant about trying to improve pedestrian and bicycle facilities in town. It includes a park, it includes a school, it includes a food source and shopping opportunities for people. So we really want to continue with the project. Even the box extension, because it's within a certain distance of the street, needs to be a bridge rail that'll hold a car up, not a person, but a car. So it's decorative, but it's very expensive. So the current cost of the project is about $800,000. We're needing to decide whether or not we want to do this project, and if we do, we need an agreement with the railroad for approximately $250,000. And I've summarized how I came up with those costs. And just so you know, in addition to designing this in-house and hours of work by our city surveyor and our technicians, we've already spent $76,000 on it. For design fees for the box, $15,000 for the railroad to review our plans, and $31,000 to buy the little pieces of right-of-way to actually expand the trail on the south side. So we're pretty invested. We still there's a cost benefit of doing the work and getting money from KDOT. We're not very happy about it, but we are recommending that you approve the agreement. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I think we're good.
So, well, I did have one question. So we currently have the crosswalks at Magnolia and Belmont. So how is that change? Is that
It actually will go, it'll put the north crosswalk at a little bit of an angle, but then the sidewalk for the northwest quadrant will go straight across the tracks and then down instead of going around the corner. The walking around the corner on the northwest quadrant changes. And then where the sidewalk goes up in the north or the southeast quadrant, the sidewalk comes straight down and then straight across Belmont. So the sidewalk is not in railroad right away.
okay? Because I heard you say something about 100 feet, but we'll still be within where the current signals are.
Yes.
Okay, that was my concern. So
Yep.
okay.
I know I've asked this question before, and my frustration continues. How many customers does the railroad actually serve south of that intersection?
I can't tell you, I don't know. I think it's a 1 train a week track, but
It's just 1 train a week now?
it's not a lot.
Yeah. That's frustrating. That I guess it'll always be there,
Okay.
even if there's 1 customer, because the line, I don't know if the citizens realize that line doesn't go anywhere. It just goes to the south industrial area and drops off and picks up and then comes back.
Well,
Yeah, it's not a through
we
track.
could pay $4 million and send it west to the airport, and that would remove it from downtown as well, which would be
Yeah?
solve a lot of problems.
It is the railroad.
Any members of the public wish to comment on this item?
Ben Winhill, Salina. I think I speak for every citizen who goes through that intersection. What I want to know is, in this project with the crosswalks and everything, are the railroad tracks going to be replaced at that intersection? And the reason I say that is the Thursday night cruisers came in from Lindsborg last Thursday, and we came down North 12th there in front, would be to the east of the old railroad station. And there's 2 sets of railroad tracks there, and they were the smoothest railroad tracks I've ever seen for North 12th. It doesn't hardly get used. And yet when you go across this one, and I can speak for everybody who's done it, that these railroad tracks is a moneymaker for people who do front-end alignments and work on cars, because it is absolutely terrible. So my question is, are these railroad tracks in the cost of this to get replaced?
No. The answer is no, it's not. I mean, it would just be the place, the section where we put the pedestrian crossing. So no, they won't replace the tracks across the intersection at all.
Any other citizens wish to comment on this item?
I yield to Mr. Bankston here that because the railroad is also wanting to collect an annual fee for future maintenance, they've calculated what it's going to cost 25 years from now, and this is the first time they've really tried to enforce it. The $805 per year for the next whatever, that is subject to Kansas cash basis law, and that is the one thing that's not in their current contract. I've been waiting 2.5 months for them to respond. We wanted to run this, but either way, it'll be in the contract, or there'll be a subsequent memo that they will need to sign acknowledging that our agreement to that yearly fee is subject to Kansas law. So, that work, Craig?
Yes, thank you.
All right. It wasn't in this agreement, but we've been waiting on it for quite a while.
Next time you talk to them, ask them when they're gonna mow the 4th Street corridor.
Norm Randall, Salina. You'll never tell the railroad what to do. The railroad will tell the government, you don't tell us how to run our railroad, and we will haul your military equipment across the country in an emergency. That's a fact. You ever seen a convoy go across this country? They don't come through here at 5 miles an hour. You don't tell the government doesn't tell the railroad how to run their railroad, and we will haul your military equipment across the country when you need it. So you don't tell the railroad what to do.
Thank you. Anyone else? And we'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I move we authorize interim city manager to execute an agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad for the Magnolia Road Sidewalk Project in the amount of $241,397 plus railroad flagging expenses required for the project and annual maintenance payments of $805, subject to the railroad acknowledgement that any future surface maintenance obligations are subject to the Kansas cash basis and budget laws.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the interim city manager to execute an agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad for the Magnolia Road Sidewalk Project in the amount of $241,397 plus railroad flagging expenses required for the project and annual maintenance payments of $805, subject to the railroad acknowledgement that any future surface maintenance obligations are subject to Kansas cash basis and budget laws. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. On to 5.2.
Item 5.2, discuss a plan for expenditure of opioid settlement funds.
Hello, City Commissioners. Sean Hennessy, Assistant City Manager. What I'm going to present to you today is basically a proposal for how to spend funds that the City of Salina will be receiving, actually has been receiving as part of an opioid settlement. I did include in your packet a study session from 2022 about how this opioid settlement came about, just very briefly. Essentially, there was an agreement by opioid manufacturers to enter into a settlement with cities and counties throughout the United States due to the large over-prescription and selling and manufacturing of opioids. They first started handing out the funds for this opioid settlement in 2022. And we've been getting those funds since the county got a little bit in 2022, but the city and the county have gotten funds in 2023 and 2024. The amount of funds that we've received have actually, for the last few years, been higher than what was originally anticipated because there was an expansion in the number of parties to the settlement. That could change in the future. But I want to go over a proposed framework for that, and I'll talk about the amounts. Go ahead and go to the next one. As part of this, like I said, the county first started receiving funds in 2022. One of the things that was done was to draft a study for what these funds could be used for in the future. And I'll talk about that here in a minute, but that study is important to kind of give some of the groundwork of the areas of focus for what these funds could potentially be spent on. The plan is to take that study and basically develop a commission form to review that on an annual basis. It is important that these funds are not, like I said, guaranteed. We have, and I'll go over and talk about the anticipated funds that we'll be receiving, but there's no guarantee for this. There could be more parties that join the settlement. There could be bankruptcies. There could be a myriad of other things. So these funds are not a guaranteed fund. If you look at this chart, go ahead and go to the next one, you can see the amounts received. The amounts from 2022 through 2024 in bold, those are what we actually received. So, and those funds were higher than what we were originally anticipating, again, because there was more parties to the settlement than what was originally happening. The remainder of the numbers through 2038 are the anticipated amounts. And again, those could be more or less. Because the city hasn't spent any of the funds, the county spent a little bit for the study. We have been able to build up around $476,000 from these settlement funds between the county and the city. And so that money is currently available. And that's important because that means that if you look on these amounts, if 2025 comes in and what is anticipated, it's not even going to be a full $100,000. But we have this amount sitting here, so we'll have that amount. The four areas that the study really wanted to focus on was to improve access to treatment and services, to expand prevention, education, and awareness efforts, reduce the stigma towards people who use drugs, and strengthen support for people in recovery. Those were the four areas of focus that the study that was conducted wanted focus to be on. And if you look on this chart, you'll see anticipating if we spent $100,000 a year with what we're going to be receiving and what we've already got built up, that would roughly allow us to go through 2038. The goal was to create a structure whereby it doesn't require any additional general fund revenue. And that would be created by this committee that would be appointed. There would be 7 members of it, and then they would determine where the areas of focus of expenditure would be. The amounts anticipated each year are broken down here even further. So there is $20,000 on the city settlement for law enforcement. And this would be really basically at the city's discretion as far as what it wanted to use it for the law enforcement. It could be for co-responders. It could be for other items. And then $35,000 for study priorities. Those are the 4 that are on the chart here that I just read. And then you also see the breakdown for the county settlement of funds. And so that breakdown of both the city and the county is anticipated to be roughly $100,000 a year. And because we have that amount built up, even if we only get $60,000 or $70,000 a year, we should be able to spend roughly $100,000 a year. Go ahead and go to the next one. The idea is to have an interlocal agreement between the city and the county. There would be the formation of this grant review committee for these funds. It would be 7 people. There'd be 4 from the city and 3 from the county. And on an annual basis, they would look to see how much has been received in this settlement. And then they would, based upon those study needs, they would grant, or they would basically select who to approve grants from applicants who requested the funds. That they would also keep track, review the grant reports, and make sure that to provide the necessary oversight for the funds. The timeline that you see here is basically what we're looking at. The county commission has already approved this structure. The July would be an effort to formalize that via an interlocal agreement. And then in August, appoint the grant committee. September, issue a grant solicitations. And then in October, the grant applications would be due, and they'd be reviewed and then recommended. And then by January of next year, they would start spending the money based upon those applications that have been received. The net effect of all of this is going to be that there will be potentially, if you agree with this framework, $100,000 on an annual basis of, quote, new money available for opioid treatment. And it would solely be funds from the settlement. It would not be including general funds or anything else. We really wanted to structure this in such a way that it would stand on its own as a program, rather than having to, again, use general fund money. So this structure would essentially allow the full utilization of those funds It would be subject to an annual review by this committee because, again, we're not certain that we would actually get this full amount. We may get more, we may get less. That's going to be subject to variations depending on the number of parties, what happens in the ongoing litigation, et cetera. But we're anticipating roughly about $100,000 a year for this if you approve this structure. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up questions?
I don't know if it's a question or it was probably a question and a concern. 35% of this money would go towards law enforcement. And short of a statewide, countywide drug task force, I don't see what $35,000 from law enforcement is going to do in Saline County compared to what it could do for opioid treatment provisions. And I mean, the four priorities seem quite appropriate. I just don't see why a third of that money is being diverted towards law enforcement. I mean, these folks need access to service, they need education. I mean, the priorities are very well written. I just not sure why we're sending a third of it out of the actual core need.
I believe that, one of the options for the law enforcement expenditures is to pay for some of the co-responders programs. So it's not, essentially the framework is to use it for law enforcement, but that could include a wide gamut of things which would not fall under the traditional definition of law enforcement as far as, like I said, co-responders or otherwise. So if you'd like to see it worded differently, we could certainly see about that, although we'll have to talk with the county to see about getting their agreement for any modifications.
Access to treatment and services could include the co-respondents. And the money would be, you sort of contract with law enforcement to deliver the co-responder. But I would think those programs would work better if the emphasis is on mental health and drug treatment rather than from the law enforcement perspective. You may end up at the same result, but it's just, from where the help is coming.
And I'm not exactly sure what the county has planned to spend their money on, but the city, as this money came in, we've talked with law enforcement about what things could it be used for? Could it be used to purchase Narcan, that sort of thing? But that's basically free to us anyway. So we don't really have expenditures outside of the co-responder program. Now this would only cover a portion of that. We don't feel like the co-responder program is necessarily 100%. 100% an opioid kind of thing.
I mean, if it's something like the DARE programs, okay, we're going to resurrect the DARE program, and that would.
Yeah, at this point, our plan has really only been to use our portion of that, as far as the city's concerned, for co-responder program. We haven't, anticipated spinning up any additional or new programs. I mean, there's just really not enough money to do a whole lot in the way of spinning up a new program.
I think that, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, Commissioner Davis, please correct me, but what I'm kind of getting is kind of the sense of we don't want this for an enforcement endeavor.
Correct.
And I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And if we need to recategorize it accordingly, because, I will say, as a former law enforcement officer, you do end up sometimes being the first or the primary first responder when somebody is under the influence, because usually you show up there for another reason. It's just, there's a disruption of some sort, and all of a sudden you have somebody coding out on you, and you don't have the benefit of the EMT or the firefighters there with you. And then I know there's some apparatuses they offer in the patrol cars now that are probably far and above what I was used to. But my assumption is probably going to be allocated toward things like that. And I personally had a situation where I used and I don't recall the nomenclature, but it was a mask that you use for CPR, and it was in the glove compartment of the patrol car, and I thought, I'm never going to use this thing. And 2 years in, and lo and behold, I'm using it on a person who coded on meth. But if it provides those kind of pieces of equipment, then I would I would say we just need to make sure we allocate something for that.
Right,
if that makes
and
sense.
you know, with that type of specificity, you know, then the word law enforcement is just a term, and I
would agree.
understand, but
Well, I come to this with a different perspective. I know many people in recovery who credit and are very grateful to law enforcement for intervening and essentially saving their lives and setting them down a new path. So I 100% support law enforcement, and
no, but the intervention, you mean doing what the mayor just described, doing resuscitation or taking them to jail?
well, there's many
Because we already have a
there's-
mechanism for
there's
taking them to
many people
jail.
that have
We've
been
already paid for
cited
that.
for DUI who, that was a bad situation, but that was their first step to recovery.
But we're already paying for
And
that.
this is what we're talking about, is recovery and turning people's lives in a new direction.
Well, one would argue our court system in this country is not heavily focused on rehab of people addicted to medication. If they can't get the medicines they need while they're in jail, they don't have the help when they get out. There's no access to mental health services. And we have a very adequate police force who can arrest folks. I mean, we're paying for that, and it's done well. But this is to keep these folks from using again in the future.
And these funds are coming from a settlement of a issue created by big pharmaceuticals and the medical system.
Right,
That's
so
just the facts.
so they should be directed towards correcting that problem.
And law enforcement is many times the first intervention.
And it will be
That's what it takes
without
a lot
this
of
money.
times, is an
That part's not going to change.
So this will be something for the committees to decide, and I think it's a good plan going forward, rather than just spreading out the money and.
I just wanted to go, how will the people be selected from the city and from the county?
There has been no specific criteria. My anticipation is, I mean, obviously the county would select their individuals. The city manager would, I would anticipate, would select the 4 individuals for the committee, somebody who has a lot of knowledge in this area and experience and able to give input on that, I think would be a key component, but there hasn't been any criteria drafted. That's what would actually be outlined further in the interlocal agreement. This is just to give you a broad outlines of a potential structure for that.
These would be people at large from the community or city and county employees?
It would be composed of people from both the city and the county who are selected to form the joint committee. And it would be 7 members total who would basically oversee the operations and the funding and overview of how the funds were spent.
But they would be city and county employees as opposed, or
Not necessarily.
citizens at large?
It doesn't, they would be, we would anticipate they would be residents of Saline County and Salina, but not necessarily just employees of the city and county. Because obviously there's going to be a lot of people in the treatment fields and otherwise who are not employees, so we would not want to limit it to just the city and county employees.
Okay.
I think philosophically, the intent is to assist with the problem, and I have no problem if we need to recategorize this to make people more comfortable, because I think, again, the spirit of it is to offer help and not focus on the enforcement component of it as much. So
We can certainly clarify that when we bring, if you're okay with the dollar amounts and kind of the structure here, when we bring the interlocal agreement back, we can maybe clarify some of those or define what it would be used for on law enforcement. We can certainly do that. And if the commission would rather put more money towards the study priorities and less towards law enforcement, we can do that as well. I mean, that's really, it's under your purview.
Yeah, I was a little confused about the breakdown when it said law enforcement. I mean, obviously we have to pay for an administrator, but to me, the remaining dollars would go into a bucket, and you have a grant request that's coming. So I don't know how they break out it's law enforcement or if there's other programs that would be more beneficial. We're sitting up here trying to micromanage this. I think the 7 individuals that will be doing it, they have the criteria of what they're supposed to meet, and none of those criteria deals with with what we've been talking about as far as the law enforcement and. In a way, we're supposed to deal with the treatment and services and reducing the helping with recovery and stuff. So I think it's outlined. So however you word that, the dollars still have to go to specific needs. So
Right, I wouldn't want a beneficial program to not get funded if 20%, if the committee thinks it has to send 20,000 towards a law enforcement issue when
yeah, I
they
guess
needed 5,000 to go to another beneficial project.
I guess we're all having troubles because we don't know how they came up with that terminology, law enforcement. We weren't sitting in the meeting, so I don't know where that came from. So I guess if we need to have that defined
Yeah,
for
we
us,
can, I will tell you from the city's perspective, we have only planned on using those funds towards the co-responder program. We feel like that there's enough use of the co-responder program for folks that have opioid addiction and opioid issues that we can justify using $20,000 a year on the co-responder program. And we had no intent outside of that. Now, I don't know if that changes 5 years from now, just depending on how things go. But we can, as we bring back the interlocal agreement, we can maybe try and clarify and define those parameters a little bit more.
Or even
based
just
on the
one
discussion today.
One bucket of funds. I mean, if the co-responder program is that strongly presented, then it should get, its fair share of the funding. But if there's a year in which that really isn't a priority, that money won't sit there encumbered by it being in the law enforcement category.
Have we ever had success hiring a second co-responder?
That is a good question.
Don't know that yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we have one that's been on for quite some time. I'm not sure if there's been a second one or not.
Officer Brown says we have the second one.
Here we go. We do have 2.
Outstanding. So at this point, we shouldn't get mired into the categories. It's more about just the general allocation of funds. And I guess that highlights kind of the importance of the members of these commissions and committees. And defer to them to some extent.
and those that apply for the grants. That's important.
It's a very valid point. So I'll open it up to public comment if we don't have any more.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Are we good for public comment now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Mark, and I normally don't, excuse me, a lot of times I don't agree with
Could
Mr.
you mention your last name? You just
Labus.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Davis, but I have to agree with him on this. It should not be used for law enforcement at all. The money should go to those who want help, and that's part of the addiction, is they have to want to have help. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You can ask any specialist. If someone doesn't want help, they're not going to stay on track. That's the same thing with AA and everything else. NA, and to be honest, if you want to get some programs for grants, those are two good programs. They really are. You already have in hospital CKF coming around asking, hey, do you want to get off whatever, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, this and that. So I would suggest you search out those that aren't necessarily searching for grants. Also, in addition, if you're going to create a commission by citizens at large, to be free of government influence. And that will obfuscate everything and make it more to the public need and not what the government wants, which is how most of our boards should work, but they aren't. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to comment on this item?
I'll make this quick. John Blanchard. On your presentation, one thing that really popped out to me was it was number 2 on your bullet points on I think the second slide, and it was about prevention, education, and awareness. And I'd like you to, if you can, let us know if there are certain things that the grant process allows or doesn't allow, because I think one of the great things that we could do with this money is kind of be proactive and not reactive. The co-responder seems to be reactive, but it's a good program. A proactive program would be things that where we target at-risk youth, and we look at different things that might keep them from getting into situations and making bad decisions. And some of those things could be after school and summer programs. Don't know if those are eligible, but those would be a really good use of those types of funds. So if there's just a way that the public can have some sort of idea what the criteria is for these, if you could put that on the web page or something like that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll bring it back to the commission.
I move we approve the outline of the expenditure of opioid funds and direct staff to draft an interlocal agreement with Salina County.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the outline of the expenditure of the opioid funds and direct staff to draft an interlocal agreement with Salina County. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. No development business. Other business. Any commissioner wish to discuss any other business?
Yeah, Mayor and Commissioners, I do have one item that I'd like to talk about just for a few minutes. I'd like to address some of the concerns that have been voiced in recent weeks about fire alarm inspection work that's been conducted by Commissioner Ivey. When I became aware of these concerns, I met with Commissioner Ivey to get some additional details about the type of work that he had been performing, and I asked him to cease any future inspections until I had a chance to review the situation and determine an appropriate path forward. When Commissioner Ivey parted ways from his previous employer, he asked the city staff if he could continue to conduct annual fire alarm inspections as he'd done under his previous employer for many years. Staff from the city manager's office, the development services department, and fire department engaged in an effort to provide an answer to Commissioner Ivey. The result of that analysis was a memo that was written by the fire marshal and delivered to Commissioner Ivey. That memo indicated that he could conduct visual inspections, but anything beyond visual inspections would require a license. Commissioner Ivey was also given access to the program that we use to track fire alarm inspections. It's apparent that there was some communication errors that occurred when we provided that answer to Commissioner Ivey. Staff indicated that he could conduct visual inspections, but did not clearly communicate that visual inspections would not meet the annual inspection requirement outlined in the code. At this point, Commissioner Ivey began conducting annual inspections in the same manner that he had in the past and entering them into our system. Those inspections were accepted with no further communication from city staff. This situation has caused me to take a closer look at the code to make sure that we interpreted it correctly in our original analysis. I've reviewed the code in conjunction with the fire department and with assistance from Clark Mize and Linville. The conclusion is that the code has some areas that need to be clarified. In particular, the section dealing with specialty contractor licenses needs to be updated to reflect more specific requirements for fire alarm testing and inspections. The section requiring annual fire alarm inspections also needs to be updated to clarify what certifications are necessary to conduct fire alarm inspections. The code, as it's currently written, does not require licensure for fire alarm inspections and testing, and does not clearly indicate that individuals conducting inspections and testing are required to have specific certification. Because our local code is not abundantly clear, we also did a review of NFPA 72, which is the National Fire Alarm and Signal Code that outlines the requirements for inspecting and testing for fire alarm systems. The NFPA provides definitions for personnel to perform certain types of work, but does not impose any licensure or qualification requirements for inspection personnel or testing personnel. The NFPA allows local authorities some leeway in outlining requirements, and based on the guidance about inspection and testing personnel, the city could promulgate less stringent requirements if we wanted to. Our past practice has been to require licensure and certification, even though it's not expressly required in the local code or the NFPA. While the city has the authority to lessen the requirements, the fire department believes, and I agree with them, that we should require licensure and certification, and we should update the code to require these, to make sure that these requirements are abundantly clear. We will be coming back to the City Commission with ordinances that will provide that clarity in the near future. While staff have been working through these issues, Commissioner Ivey began the process of obtaining the certification that would allow him to perform annual fire alarm inspections. He has obtained the Electronic Security Association Certified Fire Alarm Technician certification, applied for a specialty fire alarm contractor license, and been approved for that license. And he can now perform all aspects of annual fire alarm inspections and can also perform additional installation, maintenance, alteration, and repair. This situation has also brought to my attention the fact that there are a number of businesses who are past due in their annual fire alarm inspections. The fire department at this point doesn't feel like they have adequate enforcement tools available to them to encourage compliance with the annual testing, and I'll be working with them in the near future to determine a path forward so that we can have a better probability of getting businesses to comply with the requirements outlined in the code. That may require some additional code amendments in the future, and once we're done with that analysis, we'll bring that back to the City Commission. I'd be happy to stand for any questions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any further questions?
I would add to that I have had 15 years experience testing these fire systems, and I don't feel like anyone was ever at risk. Also, it was notated several times that I was not insured. My business is fully insured. You, as most people know, you cannot do business without insurance. So the city was never at risk. I put my name on the form. That was my risk to take. And it's all handled now. I've gotten the license, and I'm available to do that. And I'd like to thank Jacob for, I think he clearly said it all in what he had to say. So.
Thank you.
Just one, and what's the status of the inspections that were performed during that interval of time?
Yeah, so inspections that were performed by Commissioner Ivey will be redone. He has agreed to do that process. So there are 12 or 15, I think, inspections during that time frame out of about 1,200 citywide. But he will do those. I think, honestly, a bigger issue is the backlog of inspections that we need to get a handle on. That we really don't feel like we have the ability to do that right now. But it's something that through this process, I think we're going to figure that out and make sure that we're getting those things done in a more timely manner.
Thank you. Just clarify, no commissioner has any other business besides. All right, we'll move on.
I just wanted to comment on the
please.
Independence Day celebration. I'm sure that everyone was glad when the fireworks ended. But as I understand, we had no major incidents, and the Sky Fire celebration went off and was beautiful. So thank you to all the sponsors that contributed to that.
I'd like to follow up on that. I'll probably be viewed as Mr. Scrooge here, but we do have an ordinance which describes to some degree the noise, the height, where the landing zone has to be for our fireworks. And I took just some short videos with my phone, and I can't imagine that what's going off in individual neighborhoods is either safe or under our code. As I recollect, our code says that anything that goes up is supposed to come down in the yard from which it was launched. And I mean, these look like military flares going. There's no way in the world they're landing anywhere near where they were launched. Aside from the noise, which a lot of veterans don't like. I mean, there are a lot of non-veterans civilians who just don't like loud noise, but veterans particularly have a rough time with the noise, and pets. But I would like to see us review what's on the books now and get opinions from both sides, but just so that our neighborhoods become a little safer. Not necessarily, they won't get much quieter the way these things echo, but if we have noise limits in our code, pass those codes on to the folks selling the fireworks. Because if there's something that's not up to our code, it probably shouldn't be sold in the city limits. Not trying to take, I grew up in Washington, D.C. I'm about as Yankee Doodle dandy as you're ever going to find in this room. But it's getting a little bit out of control in some neighborhoods. And I love a parade, don't get me wrong. I would go down to the Washington Monument every year when I was growing up and watch the fireworks, and we'd have fireworks in our yard, but this is looking more like an artillery display than a neighborhood 4th of July fireworks.
Well, the ordinance clearly states that they're to be set off on private property, and everyone sets them off in the public street. So, I don't know the answer to that. But
It's pretty darn hard to enforce, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
it does feel like a bit of a free-for-all. And don't get me wrong, I like fireworks, but you do get a little fatigue from them after a couple days. And of course, I have two 100-pound dogs that are just almost literally climbing the walls this time of year, and which I didn't attend the Sky Fire actually for that very reason. I did get to the play day in the park though, which was nice, but. I don't really know if there's an answer in terms of enforcement on how much manpower and how much we get into the minutia of, hey, this firework fits into this category. And I hate to say it, but it almost feels like we just have to kind of grin and bear it for this couple days and just, hey, folks, let's use a little bit of common sense and let's not blow any fingers off or burn any houses down. And I guess unless there's something I'm unaware of, nobody had any structure fires. But I hope.
Yeah, I think there was one, actually. There was a garage that lit on fire, but it didn't do a great deal of damage. That's the only one I'm aware of. Fire chief's back there, though, if he...
I don't know if you have any insight to... You don't have to, but feel free to speak if you would like. We appreciate your perspective.
Good afternoon. Shane Pearson, Fire Chief for the Salina Fire Department. Well, we did have one structure-related fire over that weekend. More related, it was fireworks that were stored inside a garage, detached garage, that was started from a different mechanism, though. It did not actually start from discharge of fireworks, but fireworks did contribute to the rapid and significant spread of that fire inside the garage. Otherwise, we had several small grass fires, yard fires, things of that nature throughout, and just a couple of injuries, but for the most part, that was it. But probably, and the fire marshal can attest that probably discharge of fireworks outside the range of hours that they're approved for was probably one of the bigger issues. Police department probably attest to that as well, that quite a few complaints after hours and discharge of fireworks beyond the designated time. But
thank you.
For the most part, it was unlike the first year. The very first year we put this back, we had several house fires that were related, but that part's gotten better. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, we ready to move on to Citizens Forum? On the Citizens Forum, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please and thank you.
Perry George.
Could you wait till you get... There you go.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Perry George. I don't know the rules. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Perry George, Excel Security, former employer. Tell you a little story. Fire is number one in my book. You've seen the code books, or you should have. If you haven't, read them. My niece, two of my nieces, were in the house, second story, with their dad. Dad, house catches fire. Dad drops one out. He falls out with the daughter. The other daughter is up there. She will not jump. She died in that fire because she was afraid to jump, and she burned to death. You don't mess with fire, any of you. I'm glad you're working on this, but this is wrong. I've tried to stay out of this, and I was not going to get involved in this, but this is time to do what you're doing, and it needs to be done, and it needs to be done correctly, please. I appreciate you doing it and changing the rules. I think it shouldn't have been done for 2 years or however. In fact, actually, it's a 2-year anniversary for Jerry right now. And so I'm glad that you're doing it, but please listen to my story, hear my story. Don't mess around. Don't have people out there doing inspections that don't know what they're doing. I have 2 licenses, Oklahoma and Kansas. I'm serious about fire. I think you guys should not have been messing around with this fire for this long. I know it's been a mess. I've talked to many of you about this whole scenario. So I'm going to say my piece and say thank you. I don't know any of you. Well, I do know you and him, of course. But thank you, all of you, for doing what you're doing. Have a good day.
Mark Labus. And this is a question for all the commissioners. If an exemption is given underneath federal, it should still qualify underneath supremacy clause. Basically, essentially what that says is an exemption you cannot narrow down nor can you remove. But that's exactly what many of you did when adopting the new Chapter 13 codes for community relations. What HUD actually has given the exemption for is 4 units, one with one being the owner keeping domicile residence, not a duplex as been adopted. I would highly suggest that you take a look at that. I know we want to, as Linkwitz and many of you want to rely on a specialist, but at times you need someone with general knowledge, and that's what a lot of people should be in positions of power, so they can call BS or look into it yourselves instead of waiting for a problem to come up. It's being proactive, not reactive. Thank you.
I'm Lucille Sanderson, and yes, I'm back. Every one of you commissioners, when you put your name in the paper to acquire your city commissioner, you probably promised things, or you said you were going to do things. Did you get that done? I don't know. Only you know. I retired from water distribution, and when I retired from that, we had 8 to 10 workers. Now it's down to 3 or 4. You know that they work on main breaks. I don't care what the weather's like, they're out there. I spoke to somebody today and they said, oh, we bring them in from a different department. Well, that's not fair. When you have got, through the city of Salina, advertising in 4 different departments, needing help, needing employees, but not one word on water distribution. I don't understand it. And I used to work in that department, not manually, but yes. And I'm back about the Cozy Inn. Just recently on 311, they had a survey. And they figured it'd be $1.5 million and you'll still be fighting. But did you listen what's coming from the West? Can't you hear that laughter? We're fools. We're dumping money out there. They don't care. What of it? Let's throw some more money at their way. Take this money now and work on gangs, people that are on drugs, are fighting to get their life better. Don't you think $1 million would go a lot further that way than just keep throwing it to Colorado? Because Steve's right there against you guys. He's won against all the commissioners. That's kind of funny. So, you know, it's hard to run a city. You never can please everybody. But use some common sense. Use some common sense. Go after these people. Get them help. Get after the drug dealers that are coming into Salina. Have you looked at the people that have been arrested? It's not because they had a race. It's drugs. So I know you get tired of hearing me, but use some common sense. Put your money where it will do better. And chasing after Steve in the cozy inn is not doing it. He's still sitting there. Go after the people with drugs that are ruining our young people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, man, Salina. When the fireworks start sounding like a mortar, no wonder this guy's got PTSD. I mean, there's some fireworks out there that shouldn't even be allowed. You ever heard one of them? And then somebody drops a little firecracker in the trash can. So, and look what happened to that guy in Phillipsburg. So, get off your duff and do something. Now, about the log, oh, I didn't announce myself, did I? Norman Mann of Salina, Kansas. About the log jam. Are you destroying wildlife habitat? You need to attend KWPT meetings. That's an issue that's being brought up, destroying wildlife habitat. Let Mother Nature do what she does best. The Corps of Engineers has been consulted on this. Look at the log jam on the Salina River north of Salina. Mother Nature has taken its course. You can't beat Mother Nature. So, you're destroying wildlife habitat, and that was discussed at the last KDWPT meeting at Russell.
Ben Winhole, Salina. Thanks, Norm. You blew my thunder. Let's talk about the new work of art that we have that Mother Nature's given us called the Log Jam. It's been put out there on all the media that the city's not trying to figure out where they're going to come up with the estimated $500,000 to clean this up. Yet, in 2024 and again in 2025, you're sticking $8 million away for the River Renewal Project. Well, that right there is the start of where the river is going to start. So why don't you take $500,000 out of the River Renewal Project money and use it towards that? But on a more serious note, as far as what can happen and what is going to happen, you would probably need to get a hold of your architects from Kansas City that's putting this whole thing together. Because the channel is lower than the river that goes through Salina. It was cut that low for a reason. It's going to have to be built back up in order to divert water into the 7 miles into Salina. With that, you're talking another dam that will be higher. And of course, this is where our water inlet is for our city drinking water also. So you got to take that into consideration, which will only help that because it'll make it higher. But when I asked the architects from Kansas City on how this was going to go about as far as getting the water from the channel into the river and controlling it, they told me that this was going to be done by swinging gates. that would close and open when needed, when the water was needed in the river, and would close when the channel was high so that there wouldn't be any flooding in Salina. Well, this log jam is exactly where these swinging gates are going to have to be, along with the 500-foot sediment basin beyond that. So if you get a log jam again down the road, because you never know what's going to happen with Mother Nature, and those logs get into those gates, are they going to destroy the gates? Are they going to keep them open to where the floodwaters can come in at 2? I think maybe on the big picture for down the road, and you already went over this with the roundabouts as far as looking into the future, maybe we need to look into the future of exactly what's going on as far as where we're going to pull the river in, because the swinging gates are not going to be able to take that kind of amount of logs and the size of them of what they've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Blanchard again. Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that I be given a little discretion on the time on this. Because I have a few questions. Now, please, let me just say. The reason I ask is that it's been 6 weeks and I haven't received an email from anyone. I've filed multiple times up here. I've come up here and asked questions and nobody has said anything. You got upset with me, Commissioner
What I can do is I can
Lombine.
reset the time
Okay,
right
I'm
now.
just, okay.
Will that work?
Yeah, will you give me, because if you're not going to answer questions, then I'm not going to take the 3 minutes.
Well, I can't make any promises because
Okay.
we're not required to answer any questions, and sometimes it takes longer
Okay.
to. But why don't we do this? Let's reset the clock, and then there we go. So
Just tell me when.
Go for it. You're on.
I'll trust you on that thing. So, what do I start with? City Manager Wood, you said that Commissioner Ivy took the test. Was that the NICET test? Did he take the NICET test in Topeka?
No.
Where did he take the test?
I didn't say NICET at all.
Well, that's the requirement for a specialty contractor's license.
Well, it's not the requirement for a specialty contractor license. There are 2 tests that can be taken. He took the Electronic Security Association, which is ESA, Certified Fire Alarm Technician.
By the code? So all the fire alarm inspectors or contractors now never had to take the NICET. They could have gotten away with something else. They didn't have to take the NICET. Okay, so the second thing, we'll address that further. Second thing is that Commissioner Ivy, you stated that you have always had insurance in place, but the open records that I requested from the city manager, and his answer was, you don't have a certificate of insurance on file with the city of Salina. So you were never insured to do fire inspections, were you?
My business is insured.
Were you insured to do fire inspections?
My business insures, it's a blanket insurance policy that covers everything I do.
Is it on file with the city of Salina?
It is now.
It is now. It wasn't before when I came in before and asked the questions. Okay. My God, how much time has the city spent on attorney fees and city manager fees and other staff consulting a commissioner in his private business? The reason I ask is I asked, are you getting special treatment? And I can't think of any other business person in this town that would have gotten that level of service for free. Well, not for free, it's on the taxpayer's dime. And the answer is no. Nobody would have gotten that treatment. Also, I wouldn't have even have started down this road. The original open records request was I didn't feel it was appropriate for Commissioner Ivy to be working on city projects and contracting with the city and contracting with the Salina Building Authority for a $2,600 project. It doesn't, but the amount isn't important. It's the fact that you should not be contracting when you sit on the board of an organization. There is an ethics rule with the state, and with your own ethics policy that clearly lines out what you can and cannot do as a commissioner or an employee in regards to contracting with an organization. So I'm really disappointed that as a citizen, I came up and asked some very important questions, and I prefaced it with, this is public safety. And
Mr.
Commissioner
Blanchard, I gave
Hoppick,
you
one
extra
time,
time, and that time is
okay,
up.
Commissioner Hoppick said it best one time earlier. He said public safety is one of your biggest issues. Commissioner Ivey, I think you owe me an apology, but I think you more owe your
Mr. Blanchard,
clients an
respectfully,
apology.
your time is up.
And can I ask you just one question, then direct it to the chair? I'll stop on those questions. I requested an open.
Let's just take a recess. We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Well, I filed a.
back in session. We'll continue with the citizens forum. Is there any other citizen that wishes to come up and please contain the comments to 3 minutes? Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Martin Nunn. I live on Gibson Avenue, 1615 Gibson. The reason we're here, there's some other folks here with us. We're having the Go Green bus go through our area just to turn around. They come up Wisconsin Street, hit Gibson Avenue, back down Iowa to Iron, so they can turn around and pick up the people on the other side of the street on their bus stop. Well, they're coming by 24 times a day. Now, we used to have a quiet neighborhood there, but we got this bus ripping up through there 24 times a day, except for Saturday. I think it's 10 times. I don't know if you guys can do anything about it, or if I'm at the wrong place, or to be talking about this, but that's kind of, there's people who are concerned about safety. They got kids that like to go out in the street. We have no sidewalks, so everybody has to walk in the street if they want to walk or jog. And the Indian Rock Park is right there. It's right by Gibson. And there's a lot of people who, walk around up there, and kind of a safety issue now. And so I don't know what, all of a sudden they're going to do this to us, and we never heard anything about it until it was too late, so. Anyway.
Sure. Well, could I just get a point of clarification on that? Is your assertion that they are speeding through your neighborhood?
I think they're moving pretty fast when they come through there, and also they're noisy. Them old buses are noisy. I mean, you can hear them coming up the street. So, the idea of a peaceful, relaxed neighborhood is kind of gone by these buses flipping through there. And I don't know, maybe we're talking to the wrong people. I don't know, but I think that it should be addressed somehow. So that's
we don't we don't manage the bus routes, but we certainly can facilitate a meeting with OCCK, and we can talk through that. We can make that happen.
I appreciate that. I really would. So,
well, just nab me right after the meeting, and we'll get your contact information.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Susan Nunn, Salina, Kansas, 1615 Gypsum. Martin called the OCCK and contacted someone who transferred him to a Jason. Jason's in charge of the City Go buses, and that was like 5.5 weeks ago, and he said he'll see what he can do about getting it back down to Iron Street. I know they can't go through that parking lot again, but there's other options down Iron Street where there could be a turnaround. And so we never did hear back. Martin called again a couple weeks later. Nothing was done, so that's why we're here. We didn't know what else to do. Well, we found out, she's gone. The little gal gave us the name of Trail, and that's who we need to talk to. So that's our next move, I think. But then they want to put a new bus stop on Iowa, halfway down Iowa, by the river. And there's nobody there. There's a home, and they're here. And there's 4 very nice apartments, and nobody needs the transportation. Why it's by the river, I don't know. And that was something else we wanted to address with her. I don't know who decides that, but anyway, that's the problem. And it's noisy and dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Patty Solden. I live at 206 South Wisconsin. And I'm here too addressing that issue because of the noise in our quiet neighborhood. There's a lot of children. There's no sidewalks. There's a lot of walkers. We're between Indian Rock and Lakewood Park. And people walk from the offices on Iron Street walk in that neighborhood on their lunch breaks and such. I'm a walker. I walk out there. There's kids that walk down to the river to go fishing. It is a safety issue. It's a noise issue, and it seems very unnecessary. I don't even know why City Bus is going through there. And thanks to the nuns, they went around the neighborhood, and I've talked to some other neighbors too, and we're all pretty displeased about it and do not see the necessity of that when there are other places the bus could turn around and actually save them a little bit of mileage. It takes 4 blocks for them to come off of Iron and Wisconsin and go up to Gypsum, over to Iowa, back to Iron Street to make the turnaround. They could go 1 more block further east on Iron, and with permission, I understand, turn around in Wilson Engineers' lower parking lot. They could also go up another block to the very large parking lot at the Kansas Highway Patrol Training Center and turn around there. Those 2 parking lots, to me, seems like it would be much safer for them making that turnaround in those places rather than driving through our residential neighborhood. And this is something that hopefully the city will see the need, mostly for safety issues and for noises in a quiet neighborhood. We have a very good neighborhood. And so we would like to have some help in addressing this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I did have one other thing too, is I can see that it's going to be advantageous for City Go Bus to make those turnarounds at either one of those parking lots for the safety issues, because there could be some concerns there.
Thank you.
Can you say something real quick?
We've kind of already had your turn, and we fully understand what you're trying to convey.
appreciate the City Go Bus. It's a great benefit.
I understand it. We understand where you're coming from, and already there's going to be a dialogue between the city and OCCK, so I think we're on the way to something. Thank you. Sir?
Hello, Alex Bischel, Heel Circle, Salina, Kansas. Somebody, I heard from somebody that the jail doesn't have a public transit there, and besides that, people get let out of the jail at night. And he told me that he was concerned that he's seen some people kind of stranded there. And I was wondering if that's something we could address. I'm not really sure what the solution is, but I refer to it as a problem.
All right. Thank you. All right. If that's it.
Mayor, if I may, I have a question.
Yes, please.
And I'm looking to Mr. Blanchard. This has nothing to do with fire alarm inspections, but the comments regarding contracting for work with the city by Mr. Ivy in his role with the service he provides. My question for Mr. Blanchard, if you wish it to be posed and if he wishes to answer, is whether his comments about that are opinion or what he believes to be the law. I don't believe what was expressed is consistent with applicable law. Certainly could be an opinion, could be
If Mr. Blanchard would like to come up and offer some clarity on that, would be fine.
Well, there are kind of two things you kind of pointed out there. One is the question, opinion or a matter of law. Technically, it's an opinion because I am not an attorney.
Well-
But there are two different things that I brought up. One was the ethics policy, and I would point to Section 5 on that kind of echoes a lot of the local conflict of interest statute that I think is, I don't know if it's still governed by the ethics, Office of Governmental Ethics or not.
Yeah, well, if it's helpful, and I think we'll both try to make this quick, but there's no question but what Commissioner Ivey has a substantial interest in his business.
Correct.
The statutory definition that is the whole basis of the local government ethics statute, which is translated then into our local ethics policy. The only distinction I was hoping to make, and frankly, this
and I can add if it might help, and I think it would speed things up. As we know, you ask the government Office of Government Ethics for advice, not for an opinion after something has happened. And so there is an opinion granted in that process. I believe it's from the 90s that deals specifically with a commissioner, and it might have been a county commissioner at the time, contracting with the agency or organization, and there were two specific requirements in that opinion. And that is that either it is a fixed fee, so anybody can, it's not like there's a low bid or a high bid or whatever. So there would be a fixed fee. There still would be the question about if it's the same fee, is there preferential treatment given to a commissioner over a general citizen? But a fixed fee. The second one is that if it were advertised and competitively bid, and then that would be fine. But that's advertised and competitively bid. It's different than the purchasing policy, which if it's under the threshold, the purchasing policy recommends or encourages that multiple bids be taken, but getting multiple bids over the phone or by email is a completely different process than an advertised competitive bid. And so that's where I was coming from on that.
Okay, and I agree with everything you've said. Those are the two, the member of the elected body cannot participate in the making of a contract with an entity in which it has a substantial interest, which Commissioner Ivey obviously is the owner of his business, has a substantial interest in that business. The two statutory exceptions that you describe are the two exceptions that apply. Either public bid, or fixed compensation, which I haven't seen one of those yet, but I guess they're out there somewhere. And I was consulted on this question, and just so you know, that's what prompted me to feel a need to address, because I know you had mentioned this before.
Yeah, about a year ago.
And again today. So here's where, if you look at the statutes, as I understand them, and I think it's true, that the key is participation in the making of the contract.
And I fully agree with that. The distinction I'm trying to make is that that's the language of the statute. I'm talking about the language of an opinion that it was my assumption is precedent in this context.
Yeah, well, that, I think, I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, you're good. You're good.
If that opinion was consistent with the statute, as to those two exceptions, and I remember that opinion, but I can't remember all the facts in great detail. But here's where, in my mind, there was a distinction. If there was a contract with, in his business role with Mr. Ivy, proposed for the city, and it came before this body, he would obviously have to recuse himself.
And I addressed that at last August. And if you go back and look at it, I said, if the purchasing policy threshold were $0, then every one of those contracts would come in front of this body. But since it's less than that threshold in the purchasing policy, then nobody would ever know. And that was my point. I think those might have been my exact words. Nobody would ever know. And so the way I see it, and the way I saw it when I sat on this board, was that the purchasing authority is held by this board. It's only that designated if it's over a certain amount. Is that authority delegated? But the authority to spend taxpayer dollars sits with those 5 gentlemen up there. They just simply give that if it's under a certain amount. And so that's my point, is that if you raise the purchasing authority to $50,000 and there was somebody put a bid in for $49,000, technically what you're saying is that it's not a problem because there's not a vote being taken on it.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So my whole point was being, and it wasn't about whether somebody is breaking the law. I prefaced it with, I don't think it's good policy for someone to do business with if you're sitting on a board overseeing. Okay. And the reason I threw in the ethics policy, Section 5 is with the same thing, the contract and the fixed fee. And you had that in there when you wrote that.
Right.
But it might be Section 2 that deals with, you shouldn't be using your position as a commissioner to your advantage. And I would say if we only had one vendor in town that provided that service, I would understand it, or 2. But there are multiple ways to do that. And so it gets to, and I don't know what section it is, but then it gets to be that appearance of a conflict, an appearance of an impropriety. And that's what I was kind of trying to get at. So I appreciate you asking me the question.
Yeah, okay. It was the rest of the story. And I don't know which of us are going to speak last, but I'm not trying to speak
I'm
last.
Just listening.
The difference in my mind is that if there is an expenditure that is under the authority that has been delegated, so that staff person that will generally be making that determination of who is going to do that work that falls below the delegated authorization, as long as that is handled appropriately with proposals or whatever, depending on the circumstance, that would be dictated by the purchasing policy. And as long as there's no evidence that Mr. Ivy is trying to influence the decision in terms of who does that work, then I opined that I thought that was correct from the standpoint of compliance with state law and the local ethics policy. And I hope you can understand
I can understand where you are on
that. I hope you understand why I become concerned when there's suggestion that there's been an ethics violation when
I still believe that that's the case, but not a statutory.
Okay. All right.
And so I would just add this, because I completely agree with what you said there, with the exception that it's always been a general rule with the city manager's office and commissioners that you don't go to the fire department or Parks and Rec or any other department you go through the city manager. So I would expect that in the case of contracting for work with the city, that would be an instance where you completely do not want to deviate from that, so that it goes, so the request for the work comes directly from, hey, and you can see how problematic this can get. Because if it goes to the city manager, then the city manager is probably going to go like, I don't know if this is such a great idea. But it didn't. It went straight to the employees, and it's enough of a power dynamic difference between a commissioner and a city manager, and it's double or even more between a city commissioner and an employee or a department head or whoever is procuring that work. I don't know who signs those contracts. I'm assuming it's the city manager, but that's.
Yeah. Well, Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to work through that a little bit. So, thank you.
Mayor, I move for adjournment.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.